Hello and welcome to the channel. As always, like the video, and if you enjoyed the story, leave a comment on if you would want more. This fan fiction was not created by me, but in the description there is a link to the fanfic so you can show your support to the creator and read along. Without any more delay, let's dive into the story.
Tsunade and Hayashi, along with Shizune who was standing beside them, were flabbergasted by the absurdity of my question, and miraculously, the three of them shared a similar thought when they heard it. Do devils exist? Is this kid high on something? What do you mean? Asked Tsunade with a frown on her face, trying to make sense of this weird situation. Seeing their confusion eliminated one of my guesses, so even these guys do not know if devils exist or not, huh? Or maybe that thing is simply pretending to be one. I will tell you what happened to me, and please give me your honest opinion without holding back any information. I said seriously, and they all nodded. The first thing you need to know is the ability of my right eye's Mangekyo Sharingan. Hearing I was going to tell them such a huge secret, they both narrowed their eyes, while Shizune looked at me curiously wanting to hear more about what other secrets are hiding in this dojutsu. Tsunade, who probably had the most knowledge about the Uchiha clan, as she was a descendant of the Senju clan who used to be their worst enemies, had the most serious expression. What's he saying about explaining the ability of his right eye? Does this mean that his left eye has another ability? The more Tsunade thought about this, the more she realized the monstrosity that was standing in front of her, and fear started growing to whatever could cause him to go to such extent and sacrifice one of his eyes. My Mangekyo Sharingan gives me two unique abilities, one for each eye. Hearing that I had two abilities and not just one made them shocked a little and confirmed Tsunade's doubt, but they waited for me to finish my explanation before they give their opinion. However, Shizune couldn't hold back her curiosity and exclaimed in shock, "Two. Even the Hokage only have one ability." I nodded at Shizune and calmly said, "Yes, two. The ability of my right eye is called Jikaninki, and it allows me to sense and manipulate emotions, and if I push it hard enough as I did earlier, I can even see emotions. I left out that I could also create emotions." However, this was enough to turn Tsunade's and Hayashi's serious faces into shocked ones with wide eyes and dropped jaws. "What? Is this what you used on Mukai?" Hayashi asked in surprise at the absurdness of such ability. Not to mention, I even had another one. Meanwhile, Tsunade was thinking about something else. Did he use this ability on us? Just how can someone guard against such a thing? She couldn't help but become wary of this kid. I understood what they were feeling, so I first answered Hayashi. "Yes, this is the ability I used on Mukai. Even though he betrayed me, he had some existing emotions of loyalty towards me. Unfortunately, they were overpowered by his other emotions. So, by using Jikaninki on him, I enhanced his feeling of loyalty towards me, and he became the way you know him now." They couldn't help but feel a chill when they heard that someone can manipulate their feelings without them even realizing it, and it made them doubt whether what they are feeling right now are their true feelings. Just how many more secrets this kid is hiding, thought Tsunade. Their distrust pained me a little, but I ignored their feelings, and this time turned to Tsunade and said, "Don't worry, I never used Jikaninki on you, or anyone close to me. After all, I can't risk going blind from overusing it like I just did. Plus you will notice it if I do use it on you, as I have to turn my eyes into Mangekyo Sharingans, and they will bleed when I use the ability." Hearing what I said, both Hayashi and Tsunade felt some shame at distrusting me, and both apologized before I continued with my story and told them everything that happened from the dark mist Hayashi talked about to the dark ball of emotions that was hiding in my heart that I ended up destroying. And finally, the weird screams and whispers I heard. Hearing what I said made them feel a chill running down their backs. Especially Shizune, whose face turned blue from fear as she quickly hid behind Tsunade and kept looking behind his shoulder as if expecting a ghost to appear at any time. Hayashi frowned a little and said, "You said you destroyed that dark thing in your heart. I actually noticed some dark chakra appearing again. Maybe the things you saw and experienced were a result of this dark chakra." "Yes, it's possible. I was deprived of all my senses, so I couldn't see it, but I am pretty sure everything is related to it. However, what kind of chakra is that? This is what I want to know," I asked, feeling helpless at this. However, I soon noticed that Tsunade appeared thoughtful about something. And soon Shizune and Hayashi also noticed this, so the former directly asked her, Tsunade-sama, do you have any idea about what that dark chakra could be? Tsunade frowned deeply before she eventually said, sensing emotions is a very rare ability, not to mention manipulating them. However, when I was a kid, I once stole a notebook of my grandfather Hashirama, and in it, he wrote about the tailed beasts and their abilities. Shizune's eyes lit up in curiosity again, and she forgot about her fear when she heard about the first Hokage, while Hayashi only had a bad feeling about where this was going, but he waited for her to explain. Tsunade looked at our reaction before I noticed her giving a casual glance far away in the distance that didn't seem to contain much meaning, but her next words proved otherwise. In that notebook, my grandfather wrote that the Nine Tails had the ability to sense negative emotions. However, there was no mention that he could manipulate them. Hayashi's face quickly became full of terror as he said, do you mean this might be the doing of the Nine Tails? Tsunade, who also knew that the Nine Tails was now unsealed, nodded with a deep frown. Yes, he's the primary suspect. Enough, I said, interrupting this stupid conclusion. Kurama has nothing to do with this, I said confidently. Tsunade's relaxed a little and asked, who do you think is responsible for this then? My mind couldn't help to wonder about something I only heard about in my past life after the mention of Kurama's ability to sense negative emotions. However, I wasn't sure, because I didn't watch this particular Naruto movie. I believe that beast was called Zero Tails, huh? I thought. I vaguely remembered the description of this movie, that it was about the land of the sky, and that this Zero Tail, who was an artificial beast, feeds on people's emotions. Well, I'm still not sure, but your words gave me a vague idea. I will investigate this more in the future, I said while inside I put a new target in my head. I will make sure you will regret this. I hope we can live that far, thought Tsunade and Hayashi after they heard my optimism. Meanwhile, seeing that it wasn't long after my save point, I decided to go back in time again, since it won't cost me a lot this time to get back to my full power and prepare from the new front I was heading to. I set in my head load, and before long my vision was covered in darkness, and I quickly returned to my save point. Once I was back, I noticed that my weakened body and my almost blind right eye returned back to normal. However, that heaviness in my heart also returned, and I understood that the weird dark spot in my heart was there once more. I will deal with you soon, I thought before I called for Hayashi, who was giving orders to the army, and as he came close to me and asked what I wanted, I surprised him by saying, I want to go to the Suna front, I said seriously, and with this, I experienced each battlefield multiple times, gaining more and more experience as time goes by. I am finally back, huh? A kid sitting on his bed suddenly muttered as his black vision slowly cleared up and he could see the inside of his room again. A scene that felt so nostalgic, yet he knew that it has only been 2 months since he saw this tattered house. However, the things he went through and experienced both physically and mentally made it feel like it has been years. Who would have thought it would take me so long to go back to this room? I thought as I looked at the interior of my old bedroom. A room that never changed. However, I can't say the same about myself. This was a save point I made when I came back from recruiting Mukai and found the situation has changed in the village because of the actions the elders decided to take against me and the rest of the clan. So, after arresting Yashiro and making a plan with Fugaku, I made a save point here just in case the situation doesn't go as planned when we set out to comfort the elders and deal with Danzo. And it didn't only end up horribly in the end. I lost almost 5 years of my life for this and suffered a lot, but it was worth it, I thought as I remembered all the things I went through as well as the experience I gained, which will always remain ingrained in me. But something that I found regretful was that no matter how much I tried to use Kurama's chakra, the system kept rejecting it as it wasn't truly my own, and for some reason, Tailed Beast chakra transforms into a miniature version of them with consciousness when they have a vessel. So, the only way to use a Tailed Beast chakra is to become its Jinchuriki and allows for your chakra and his to merge together with the passage of time until you become inseparable. But I don't want to tie my life with that of something else, especially something if removed from me, I will simply die. Well, time to change a few things, I muttered to myself in this silent room when I sensed someone familiar approaching. It was Fugaku, not the Hokage, but simply the head of the Uchiha clan and the commander of Konoha's police force. Bakorio, it's time to go to the meeting as planned, said Fugaku with a serious face. I nodded at him with a smile. Indeed, I've been waiting for this for a long time, but first we need to make some small changes to the plan. For some reason, Fugaku felt a chill when he saw my smile, and thought, why does he look so different? We were just together an hour ago, yet now he feels somewhat ominous. Fugaku did his best to bury his doubts for now, and asked, what kind of changes you want to make at the last second? I wickedly smile as I thought about a certain annoying parasite. Well, the first change will be the death of Danzo, no matter what. Fugaku started listening to the modifications I made to our initial plan, which can only be described as cruel. But wicked, I was no softy either, and he liked them. So, when we finished our talk, he quickly left, and came back soon after, and we started walking towards the Hokage Tower with him in front, and me following silently behind him. Minus 10 minutes later at the Hokage Tower. The various clan heads along with the third Hokage and his 3 council members gathered for the urgent meeting that Fugaku issued after the recent actions the village took against the Uchiha clan. The clan heads thought that this was the least the Uchiha can do to try to regain some of their trampled dignity, while Hiruzen and his council thought that this was a good opportunity to make those decisions set in stone, so they agreed to this urgent meeting. After a while, Fugaku entered the meeting room with me following behind him, and it instantly turned so silent to the point that you can even hear a pin drop as all the focus turned on us. I calmly analyzed the people in this room. Some fought alongside me in the war, some against me, and some I even fought before the war, so I didn't know how to feel about them right now, other than wanting to kill some of them. Of course, these were either the clans who stuck with Konoha until the end, or the ones that followed the council in their betrayal. As for the last one, it was Danzo who was eyeing me silently with a neutral face while inside, he was actually admiring the ominous aura I was subconsciously releasing. Always good at hiding your emotions, I thought as I could clearly feel a mixture of dark and sinister emotions emanating from him and directed at me. Experiencing this scene again, I couldn't help but remember my first time here and how I tried to act nice to these people to gain their trust and support to take down the Council of Elders. However, all of this didn't matter to me anymore as I only felt cold and distant. As Fugaku took his seat and I stood behind him, we heard an old and cold voice say, "What's the meaning of this meeting, Fugaku?" It was Danzo who thinks so highly of himself to the point that he talked before the Hokage and pretended like he knew nothing about the situation he orchestrated. But no one said anything, and Fugaku's eyes turned colder at this, and he almost attacked Danzo, but I nudged him to calm down. Slightly calming down, Fugaku's eyes turned chillingly cold as he looked at Danzo and the rest of the elders and went directly to the point. My clan was accused of many things, including Bakorio here, trying to manipulate the Jinchuriki, even though there's no proof of any of this. Do you find this okay, Hiruzen? Hiruzen frowned a little, not because of Fugaku's lack of respect for calling him directly by his name. Instead, it was because he was right, but Hiruzen can't turn down the suggestions of all his council easily, especially when the Uchiha could truly pose a potential danger to the village. Or so he tries to justify his weak character. However, Koharu couldn't take this disrespect silently and was about to scream her BS. However, she suddenly froze in her seat when she felt a terrible killing intent locked in her, shocking not only her, but everyone in the room, including Fugaku. With chills running down their spines and with fearful or surprised looks, everyone quickly averted their eyes to look at the source of this killing intent, which got them even more shocked when they found out it was emanating from the kid standing behind Fugaku, while silently eyeing Koharu like a predator eyeing his prey. Just what did this kid go through to be capable of releasing such a level of killing intent? Hiruzen stood up in shock and ready to protect the out-of-breath Koharu at any time, while Danzo looked at the kid with shining eyes, as if he found the greatest treasure in the world, as he thought. This kid got darkness. He would be a perfect addition to Root. A cold, childish voice soon broke everyone from their daze as the killing intent slowly retracted. This is the first and last warning. If anyone tries to interrupt this meeting with meaningless words, they will be dealt with accordingly. Hiruzen swallowed slightly as he sensed the ominous aura that didn't fully dissipate around the kid, and he knew that something bad was going to happen if someone recklessly acts against him. So he quickly calmed down and tried to divert the topic back to what Fugaku said. Everyone calm down, please. To answer your question, Fugaku, the decisions we make aren't based on my opinion alone, but the opinion of all of the council, with Konoha's safety as our first priority, and we think it's better to keep Naruto away from people until he's mature enough and not easily tricked. I couldn't help but marvel at how skilled this Hokage was at insulting people without saying it out straight and justifying his actions at the same time. Because what he basically said is that the Uchiha can't be trusted and they might have intentions to harm the village, so they decided to move against them first. Fugaku, who was linking the change he felt about me earlier to the killing intent I just released, was angered by what Hiruzen said even more, but his answer was very calm. Twist your words however you like, Hiruzen. In the end, you don't have proof for any of your accusations. However, I am going to make accusations right now which I have proof of. Danzo had a bad feeling for some reason, as Fugaku smirked coldly at him, and it was confirmed when he heard him say, starting by Danzo's involvement in Orochimaru's experiments. Hearing Fugaku mentioning Danzo's involvement with Orochimaru's experiment on the people of Konoha made almost everyone in the room narrow their eyes and look at Danzo suspiciously. After all, there's no guy more known in Konoha, or even in the whole known world, for doing shady business than this half-mummy Danzo. Not to mention the people here weren't idiots, as some of them already suspected that Orochimaru couldn't have done all those things on his own without any backing or someone to help cover for him. But they never had any proof that Danzo helped him. However, everything was changing now as Fugaku mentioned that he has proof. And if one thing this Uchiha clan head is known for is that he doesn't bullshit. Bam. How preposterous. You better have that proof you were talking about. Otherwise, I will make sure you will pay dearly for this accusation today, said Danzo as he slammed the table with a cold look. I watched all of this coldly. This was the first change I decided to make to the original plan, so rather than involving Naruto by bringing him to this mess and expose Minato's existence, I decided to expose Danzo's dark history, which he had plenty of, especially since I now know the location of the closet where he hides his skeletons. Doing this wasn't hard because in the previous timeline, after we took control of the Root headquarters and took inventory of all their stored secret information, I made sure to remember the important locations where the information that contained Danzo's involvement with Orochimaru's experiment and other dark secrets. So, when I came back and discussed the changes in the plan with Fugaku, he used his Mangekyo ability to sneak into Root HQ undetected and retrieved everything we needed before we came here. Of course, there was nothing directly saying that they were doing the experiments together, as that would be stupid of the careful Danzo to keep such an obvious thing. However, he still kept many reports containing the results of the experiments Orochimaru did that no one could know if he wasn't involved. And as these results can only come from experimenting on Konoha's ninjas, as indicated by some of them having bloodlines like the Yamanaka, Senju, Uchiha, etc., he won't have any way to rid himself of this situation, and this was just the start of his worries. As I was thinking this, Fugaku, with the same cold glimmer in his eyes, said to Danzo with a mocking smile, "How ironic. The man who likes to accuse people doesn't like being accused. Danzo's cold face turned into a frown from the annoyance he was feeling, but Fugaku ignored him and turned to the Hokage, who was eyeing him seriously as he feels responsible for anything related to Orochimaru as his teacher, not to mention the impact this information could cause if proven true. So without any suspense, Fugaku took out a red scroll with the kanji for sealed written on its cover and handed it to Hiruzen. How did this thing end up here? Danzo almost screamed out loud when he saw this scroll, and some perceptive people in the audience noticed this, including one Shikakanara. There's actually something that could make this cold-hearted Danzo lose his calm. This situation doesn't look good, thought Shikaku, as he started secretly signaling to some of his close friends like Choza and Inoichi to be on guard. Meanwhile, Hiruzen looked at this and was secretly angered as he looked at the scroll that clearly had Danzo's chakra signature on its seal. Was Danzo really involved with Orochimaru's experiments? He didn't want to believe it, but the truth will soon reveal itself as he examined the scroll and said, "There's no doubt that this scroll belongs to Danzo from the chakra signature on the seal. Danzo, please open it for us." Sure. Danzo was about to touch the scroll with a dark look in his eyes, but Fugaku quickly activated his Sharingan and said, "If you do anything to destroy this scroll, it will be war between us. I hope you understand this very clearly, Hiruzen." Hiruzen's eyes flickered slightly, and everyone knew in their hearts of hearts that he intended for Danzo to destroy the scroll to avoid the possible conflict. But now it seemed like it can't be avoided either way, so he sighed and said to Danzo coldly, "Danzo, if anything happens to the scroll, those accusations will be considered as true." Danzo's expression turned worse at this, but he was determined to destroy the scroll either way, as with this at least there won't be real proof for his collaboration with Orochimaru. It seems Hiruzen isn't a completely hopeless case, thought Fugaku as he saw the events playing out just like Bakorio told him, so he suddenly took out the scroll away from Danzo, who angrily yelled, "What are you doing, Fugaku?" Fugaku was unfazed by his temper and simply said with a ruthless smile, "Why would I risk letting you destroy this scroll when we can open it safely?" Everyone was surprised at this, as anyone in the room, even those that have the lowest knowledge of Fuinjutsu, could tell how hard it's to open this seal. However, this was something I prepared for many times in the month before the war with the help of Minato and Kushina, so I was confident in doing it, and Fugaku also trusted me with it. "Are you toying with us, Fugaku?" yelled Hamura as he felt that Fugaku was playing with them, and many people echoed this sentiment. However, they were quickly silenced when Fugaku took out a chakra-storing scroll and handed it to Danzo. "Store some of your chakra into this, and don't try to do anything to the scroll." Danzo looked at the scroll happily, but he hid it well. Who would have thought Fugaku would be so idiotic to give me an opportunity to destroy the scroll? You will regret this decision. Indeed, that seal was made in such a way that if you don't follow a certain pattern when infusing chakra into it, the seal would catch on flames, which will destroy the scroll along with its secret content. "Maybe this is for the best," thought Hiruzen as he said, "Okay, you can open it on your own, but you will bear the responsibility for its destruction." Said Hiruzen, and Fugaku simply ignored him as he received the scroll containing Danzo's chakra. However, someone interjected at this moment. It was Shikaku. "Third Hokage-sama, we can't risk getting a scroll that contains such important information destroyed. If we dash," however, before he could even finish, Koharu rudely interrupted him by saying, "We agree to this decision." And Hamura nodded after her, which made Shikaku depressed and think, just why can't you be fair when it comes to the Uchiha clan? He ended up sighing and sitting back in his seat, hoping Fugaku can really unseal this scroll, which was very unlikely, and many people in the room were feeling the same way. After Fugaku received the scroll, he shocked everyone when he turned around and simply walked to the kid he came with and handed him the two scrolls, to the shock of everyone. "Don't tell me," was the thought in everyone's mind, as even the sleepy eyes of Shikaku widened in surprise at this unexpected turn of events. "Fugaku, what are you doing?" asked Hiruzen, but the only response he got was hearing Fugaku say, "It's all up to you now," while looking at the kid. Ha ha ha, he's really letting the kid do it. This is great, Danzo burst out laughing sinisterly in his head, feeling quite lucky. Meanwhile, I calmly nodded at Fugaku, unbothered by the attention I was receiving and the whispers that started echoing in the room, which was subsequently silenced after I used my Sharingan, as it was a fully developed 3-Tomo Sharingan. Is this the birth of a new Uchiha genius, was the thought in everyone's mind. However, what they didn't know is that the kid in front of them was far more than a genius. He was a monster among monsters. Under the surprised gazes of everyone in the room, including the usually cold-looking Danzo, I started by slowly manipulating Danzo's chakra and checking if there is anything wrong with it or the scroll that contained it, such as hidden seals or curses, using my Sharingan and knowledge of seals. It seems he's really confident in his seal, huh? I thought as I confirmed that there was nothing wrong with the scroll that contained Danzo's chakra. Let's start then, I thought, after giving Fugaku a small nod to be careful, just in case, before I started manipulating Danzo's chakra in a very particular pattern before injecting it into the secret scroll that contained Danzo's involvement with Orochimaru. My hand became covered in chakra, and that chakra slowly started transforming into 5 vortexes of different sizes, all rotating in an anti-clockwise manner on top of each one of my fingertips. Then, I started injecting them one by one into the seal. This can't be. How's it possible for this kid to know the way to open my seal? Danzo suddenly flinched as he looked in disbelief at how the kid was opening the seal and was tempted to take action, but he immediately found out that Fugaku was eyeing him like a hawk, probably even wishing he would interfere so he wouldn't excuse to attack him. Meanwhile, the rest of the people in the room were surprised at the fine chakra control this Uchiha kid possessed, and the scariest thing they realized is that this wasn't even his own chakra that he was so skillfully manipulating. It was Danzo's. So it was much harder to achieve such a feat. Yet, he could control it with such dexterity and precision to open a seal, making them wonder just how good he is at controlling his own chakra. This kid's chakra control could put even most Jonin to shame. Just how did he become so good at it at such a young age, thought Hiruzen, as he kept getting more and more surprised by this kid, and he started having some doubts about him. No, that's not all, thought Hiruzen as he looked sideways at Danzo. The method this kid is using to open the seal must be correct, from Danzo's panicked expression. Who planned all of this? What the people in this room didn't know is that I gained this level of chakra control not only from my constant fighting, but also from controlling the Nine Tails chakra, which makes controlling Danzo's chakra feel like child play to me. Click. The sound of a lock opening resounded in the room, bringing everyone out of their thoughts, and before long the kid opened the scroll and looked at it briefly before he handed it to Fugaku, who did the same, and it made his eyes lit up slightly. Bakorio didn't lie to me, thought Fugaku happily, but he quickly hid it and returned to his stoic look, but his flash of happiness didn't escape the eyes of the crafty people in this room. After Fugaku read everything, he handed the scroll to Hiruzen, who found himself quickly filled with rage as he read the atrocities Danzo committed along with Orochimaru, which they previously couldn't find proof of because Orochimaru made sure to destroy all evidence of his experiments. However, now he had a clear idea of just how cruel they were to the people of this village, so he angrily handed the secret scroll to Koharu and Hamura to read before he looked at Danzo, and coldly said, as he slammed the table in anger, "Explain this, Danzo." First, his student went too far by betraying the village and using its people for his selfish pupasses, and now his friend seemed to be the one that was covering for him. Hiruzen was really about to lose it. Everyone in the room noticed the clear rage in Hiruzen's face, and soon Hamura and Koharu had similar expressions filled with disgust as they looked at Danzo, and they subsequently handed the scroll to Shikaku. Danzo looked coldly as all of this ensued, and simply said, "There's nothing to explain. The Uchiha probably used some kind of method to fabricate my chakra signature and create that scroll. Otherwise, a kid wouldn't be able to open it so easily." Hiruzen was about to snap at the stupidity of this claim, as faking someone's chakra signature was simply impossible, and even someone like him with his extensive knowledge and talent that gained him titles like the Professor and the God of Ninja couldn't do such a thing. Of course, he didn't know about the existence of Zetsu. However, It was obviously no easy feat for the kid to open such a complicated seal. But in the end, he was able to, and this begged many questions, so he reined in some of his anger and asked me, "How did you know how to open the seal?" At this point, everyone in the room had an idea about the gruesome content of the scroll, and the atmosphere was deadly serious as they waited for my answer. I have two Fuinjutsu masters as teachers, and they were the ones who created this method to open the seal. I simply followed their instructions. As for their identity, you will meet them after this is over. I paused here before I looked at Danzo directly. You can deny this scroll belonging to you as much as you want. However, it's not the only proof that you did human experimentations using people from the village, I said coldly to Danzo, who narrowed his eyes dangerously at me. Kid, know your place. How dare you talk to a dash? Danzo was about to remind everyone about his status as an elder, but Hiruzen somehow became a real man and cut him off as he asked this time while looking at Fugaku for confirmation. Do you really have more proof? Fugaku stoically nodded at him before he looked at everyone in the room and said, Everyone, the truth is right in front of you, yet all of you are simply ignoring it. This got everyone thinking, but only Shikaku and Hiruzen had an idea as they looked at Danzo's covered parts, making him have a bad feeling. Fugaku, who noticed this, nodded in appreciation at Shikaku and said, You are truly worthy of being Konoha's Jonin commander. Just as you guessed, Shikaku, the evidence is Danzo himself, and if he uncovers his bandaged eye and hand, you will all see what an abomination he is and the results of these heinous experiments, as well as what he was truly after. The hidden powers of the Uchiha and the Senju. Everyone present in this meeting room looked collectively at Danzo, and Shikaku, who was just complimented by Fugaku, quickly asked the important question. Thank you for your compliment, but can you explain what do you mean by the hidden powers of the Uchiha and Senju? And so, under the unwilling stare of Danzo, Fugaku started explaining about Izanagi and its effects in saving its user's life, and how Danzo is trying to kill the Uchiha to collect their eyes for it, and how Hashirama cells increase vitality and regeneration as well as chakra capacity. Shock was the only emotion in the faces of those present, and Hamura couldn't help but yell the thought that was in everyone's mind. How's it possible for such an ability to exist? Something that could change reality. Meanwhile, the look in Hiruzen's face started turning sharper and sharper as he began to understand the real purpose behind Danzo's behavior and actions towards the Uchiha for the past years, and how he manipulated him and the elders to push them to the brink of a civil war. So, he looked at Danzo coldly and ordered, Unveil your right eye and hand right now. Danzo fell silent and simply gave Fugaku a very unpleasant look while thinking, it seems I'm left with no choice, before he moved into action without saying anything. Danzo suddenly moved into action, taking almost everyone by surprise. Almost. And the first thing he decided to do was remove the hindrance that was named Fugaku, who's blocking the way in front of him, and Danzo did that by using the wind release. Vacuum slash, which sent a very sharp and destructive slash at me. However, to his disappointment, Fugaku didn't react the way he wanted, because instead of trying to save me, he noticed that Fugaku simply shot the kid a quick glance before he rushed at him, trying to interrupt his signaling to his root Umbu to open a way for him out of this room. Meanwhile, just as Danzo used his vacuum slash jutsu, I mimicked his actions perfectly and sent a vacuum slash too, surprising some people in the room who started moving to protect me, especially Hayashi, who didn't have a good idea of how strong I was. Boom. Just as intended, my vacuum slash clashed with Danzo's above the conference table, and after some struggle between the two, one ended up going up, slashing the ceiling in two, while the other went down and split the conference table in two, while creating a strong air current in the room. And the sound of the clash finally woke some people from their shock, including Hiruzen, who quickly yelled, Danzo, what's the meaning of this? Unfortunately, the only response Hiruzen and the people in the room received was the root Umbu attacking them, and Danzo sending a vacuum shockwave at Fugaku while jumping backward to the window of the conference room to escape. However, both Fugaku and I were ready for this and took Danzo's retaliation into consideration when I changed the plan. So, just as Danzo broke the window and attempted to escape, He found to his surprise 2 pairs of blood-red eyes with 3 tomo appear right in front of him out of nowhere, and they belonged to 2 people he recognized very well who didn't have any good intentions towards him. How can they be here? Was all Danzo could think of before he quickly did a hand sign and got his head sliced by me using my short sword in a swift motion while his heart got stabbed by Fugaku using a kunai. Don't let your guard down. He used Izanagi before we got him, I said to Fugaku as I noticed Hiruzen suddenly appear beside us looking in shock at the head of his friend flying through the air with a mixture of disbelief and disappointment. However, he soon heard what I said to Fugaku. Is he really going to use Izanagi? He thought as he looked at the kid who was capable of taking Danzo by surprise, and he didn't have to wait for long to get the answer to her question as his disappointment transformed into shock as Danzo's decapitated body and head slowly vanished into thin air before he reappeared a short distance away with his body fully intact while looking warily at the 3 of us. I don't know how you know about all these secrets, but today will be your demise, said Danzo as he unveiled his hand, an eye which contained Sharingans. So, they didn't lie, huh? Thought Hiruzen in sadness while looking at his old friend, but his eyes soon turned sharp and determined as he spoke. Danzo, surrender now before things get too out of hand. Danzo looked mockingly at Hiruzen, then he gazed coldly at Fugaku and I before he said, It's already too late, Hiruzen. Then, without hesitation, Danzo bit his finger and summoned Baku, Danzo's huge elephant-like summon. Hiruzen hesitated a little, which made him waste some time to react. However, Fugaku and I were different. Knowing how to counter Danzo's summon, Fugaku immediately started casting the fire release, Phoenix Sage Fire Jutsu. This jutsu allows the user to spit a volley of small fireballs into the air. At a glance, it can appear as though there was only one fireball that then burst into many. The many small flames move wildly through the area, potentially mesmerizing targets as they're surrounded. The user controls each individual flame with their chakra, allowing them to guide each at the target and, consequently, making this jutsu difficult to evade. Not to mention that shuriken can be hidden within the flames, not only making them more deadly upon impact, but also, by controlling the flame's movements, gives the user a means of controlling the shuriken as well, and this is exactly what Fugaku is trying to do. However, I pushed it even more as I quickly inhaled a huge breath of air to cast the wind style. Great breakthrough jutsu creating a huge blast of wind, which reacted positively with Fugaku's Phoenix Fire as each sphere of fire grew larger and faster. The recently summoned Baku had no time to react as he was burned in various places by the fire. However, Danzo, who was hiding behind him, took this time to take a deep breath, and just as his summon disappeared in a puff of smoke, he exhaled again, casting the wind style, Vacuum Great Sphere, which created a giant sphere of wind that he directed directly at us. After all these events unfolded, Hiruzen finally reacted to the situation, and not wanting to get shredded by this jutsu, he quickly did some hand seals before he put his hand on the ground, casting Earth Style, Great Mud Wall Jutsu. This jutsu created a very high and wide earth wall in front of us that completely protected us, as well as the people behind us from Danzo's Great Vacuum Sphere, but it ended up almost destroyed, showing just how terrifying Danzo's attack was. However, right after this, dozens of very fast vacuum spheres that resembled high-caliber bullets penetrated the wall and headed straight at us, almost taking us by surprise. That's if we didn't have our Sharingan active. Unfortunately for Hiruzen, he didn't have one, and he barely dodged them thanks to his experience and knowing how sly Danzo can be, so he was prepared. It seems he's using his implanted Sharingan to locate us, huh? Well, let's end this quickly. I thought as I shot Fugaku a look which he quickly understood, and, to Hiruzen's surprise, we both rushed at Danzo at the same time. The only difference is that I now have 2 short swords in my hands. Hiruzen, go all out before we get any casualties, I yelled at Hiruzen, causing him to become serious, and he quickly bit his finger and summoned his friend, the Monkey King Enma. Meanwhile, while he was doing this, Fugaku was the first to reach Danzo as he was way faster than the current me, and he didn't allow him any more time to cast any high-level jutsu, as he engaged him in a taijutsu fight in which Danzo found himself in the losing end. However, His situation was only going to get worse as I positioned myself with the sun behind me and Danzo in front, allowing my shadow to touch his, and he suddenly lost sight of me. Was all the distracted Danzo could think before he found Fugaku's kunai heading towards his neck, forcing him to tilt his head to barely dodge it and retaliate with a punch of his own, which Fugaku blocked with his hand. However, this is when I emerged behind Danzo from his shadow and stabbed him in the back and through his heart until my sword emerged from his chest, and he coughed some blood. All of this was because he made a tiny mistake, and this is all that is needed in a high-level fight for you to lose your life, and I learned this the hard way. That's why my timing was too perfect, like a very experienced assassin, leaving him no time to react. However, again Danzo simply vanished into thin air and appeared some distance away from us while shooting me a dark look and said, "The Uchiha really hit a very dangerous monster. However, you won't take me by surprise again." His last words were said while shooting an evil smile at Fugaku, and I quickly understood what he meant as I noticed the curse marks quickly spreading all over Fugaku's body from the place where he just blocked Danzo's last punch. However, I couldn't help but smile when I saw this, wickedly, and it sent chills down Danzo's spine as I followed it by saying, "Fine, I will be the monster you think I am." TCH, he got Fugaku with his curse, thought Hiruzen before he quickly yelled, "Fugaku, I will deal with Danzo, try to break from that cur dash." However, before he could finish what he was saying, I did a hand sign. Danzo, who was now completely on guard, felt his instinct screaming from some incoming danger, so without even stopping to think about it, he jumped away from his current position. Just as he did, shadow spikes emerged from my shadow, which was close to him, and he ended barely dodging them. This is the Nara clan's jutsu. Hiruzen couldn't help but exclaim loudly. The reason the clans in Konoha have specialties like the Nara clan with their shadow manipulations or the Aburame clan with their bug control is not because other people can't learn these jutsu. No, the reason is that if you don't have a bloodline that's compatible with these jutsu, it would be very hard to learn them, even for the most talented ninja. That's why bloodlines are important. So, ninja often tries to master what's best suited for them and refine it as much as they can, whether it be taijutsu, ninjutsu, or jinjutsu. Otherwise, it would be counterproductive, similar to asking someone like Lee to start learning ninjutsu or jinjutsu despite his lack of talent in them instead of focusing his taijutsu, where he's immensely talented. Now, however, Hiruzen was looking at a kid who not only can merge with the shadows, which is something the Nara clan members can't do, but can also manipulate it and turn it into a physical form to attack his enemies, which is the highest level the Nara clan's techniques could reach. "Old man, I will hold him back. Help Fugaku break out of the seal as quickly as possible," I said with my eyes focused on Danzo. "Are you sure you can hold him back?" asked Hiruzen with a frown as he exchanged a glance with the half-paralyzed Fugaku, who was debating whether to use his Mangekyo Sharingan and break this curse. "Yes, I am," I responded before I calmly walked towards Danzo. "Your confidence will be your downfall, kid," said Danzo, clearly angry for getting looked down on by a kid. "Well, we'll see," I said as I rushed at him with my short sword while Hiruzen rushed to help Fugaku. However, not before ordering Enma to assist me. "Help the kid and do your best to hold Danzo for 15 seconds. We should be able to break this damned curse quickly if we work together from both the inside and the outside," said Hiruzen, and Fugaku nodded, agreeing with him. "Don't worry, I will do my best to keep him safe," replied Enma before he rushed at Danzo after me. "TCH, I will make you regret this," thought Danzo. Then he took out 2 shurikens and lifted them in each of his hands before he started blowing on them, causing them to start rotating with increasing speed while injecting them with wind chakra that created an extremely sharp disc of wind around them. Once he finished, I was only a few meters away from him, and he directly threw those 2 wind shurikens at me, one vertical and the other following behind it horizontally, and immediately started preparing his next move. "Careful, kid," yelled Enma behind me in worry, knowing full well that if I get hit, it's over. However, there was no hesitation in my blood-red eyes as I looked at this attack, and I sidestepped to dodge the first vertical shuriken, while simultaneously lowering my body to dodge the second one. All of this was done with such dexterity that I almost seemed like a snake slithering between the two very fast shurikens, which left the people watching speechless. But it wasn't over, as right after I dodged them, I launched a very fast stab at Danzo, which interrupted the jutsu he was trying to cast and forced him to dodge, but he quickly retaliated by a very fast kick to my head that I barely reacted to and dodged by leaning back and gaining a little bit of distance away from him. The difference in our physical attributes is simply too vast for me to face him with my currently weak body. I can't take him down like this with only taijutsu. I thought as I coldly analyzed everything about Danzo. From the speed of his reaction to the way he reacts to the skills he uses when his enemy is in close or long range. He's very good at taijutsu, especially with his very high mastery of the Sharingan. And then there's his ninjutsu, which makes him probably one of the best wind users in the history of the ninja world, so giving him distance is a recipe for disaster with the high chakra volumes he's showing. Danzo seemed to have realized that I was analyzing him, and Inma was approaching, so he said, "Kid, there's nothing you can do to defeat me. Not to mention there will be no help." The moment he finished talking, I heard Inma yelling while increasing his speed, "Quickly stop him." However, it was too late, and I could see a green light shining from the ground under me and Danzo. "This is... I thought I interrupted you," I exclaimed with a surprised face as more green light emanated from the ground quickly in a circular shape before a very strong wind started gushing out from it, blocking people from entering. "You almost did. However, when you live as long as me, you don't need to rely on only hand signs," said Danzo smugly, and I noticed some seals on the ground. "It seems you started preparing this from the moment you got Fugaku, huh?" I said with a sigh. "Indeed. This wind barrier can even block Hiruzen for a while, so don't think of escaping, and I will make sure to take good care of your eyes," said Danzo with a cruel look on his face. "I see, so it was a trap for Hiruzen," I said, and I noticed Inma punching the barrier trying to break it to no avail. Danzo didn't say anything more and simply started blowing on his hand, creating a green sword made of wind before he started rushing at me. "Bakorio, be careful," yelled Fugaku as he struggled even harder to break the seal. But he knew that it would take him a few more seconds with the help of Hiruzen if he didn't use his Mangekyo Sharingan, and he was just about to use it when he heard a very calm voice say eerily to Danzo, "Are you sure these walls are keeping others out? Or you in?" My voice was dark without any fear, which calmed Fugaku down and stopped him from using his Mangekyo Sharingan, but it also gave him chills at the same time, not to mention how Danzo felt. "Die," said Danzo as he arrived in front of me and slashed his blade at me, and I tried to block it with my short sword. However, the impact was too strong and I lost my grip on it, causing it to fly away from my hand. And then, with killing intent in his eye, Danzo slashed his wind sword at my neck with even faster speed, and the scene almost seemed to be freezing in time in the eyes of the onlookers as the wind sword eventually hit my neck, and my head slowly started detaching from my body. In this frozen time, Fugaku's eyes started slowly turning into his Mangekyo Sharingan uncontrollably, while Hiruzen and Inma stared with wide eyes in shock as Danzo started slowly smirking. However, reality isn't always as it seems, and as that head started flying in the air with blood gushing from its neck, a hand slowly emerged from the shadow of the headless corpse, bringing with it death to whoever it touches. As everyone thought that Danzo actually succeeded in trapping me in his wind barrier and chopped my head off. The reality of the situation was way different, as the one who was laying a trap for the other was me, and it all started when I attacked him head-on recklessly to make the difference in our physical attributes apparent. Then, when he thought he got me trapped in the wind barrier that didn't hide from my notice, especially since I understood the basics of seals, he chose to save some of his chakra for escaping, and knowing that I could mimic his wind-style jutsu with my Sharingan, as I did to his vacuum slash in the conference room, which would only create a stalemate and buy time for the others to rescue me. So, he opted for close combat, knowing that it's his best advantage, and he could save his chakra for Hiruzen and Fugaku. However, what he didn't know is that he was only facing my shadow clone, and the real me was hiding in its shadow from the time Fugaku and I attacked him outside the conference room using the Shadow Merge Jutsu, which I learned from a mercenary in the war. All of these events combined resulted in Danzo feeling reassured of his victory, especially when he saw the unfaked reactions of worry on Fugaku's face and the rest, which made him believe that this wasn't planned, and it caused him to feel smug and let his guard down for an instant at the pleasure of ending the life of this Uchiha genius. However, this instant was all I needed as I attacked him from the shadow with a new jutsu I received from the system. A quick dark hand emerged from the shadow of the headless corpse, leaving the smug Danzo no time to react as it grabbed his ankle. And if anyone has a sharp enough vision, they would notice that my hand wasn't dark as a result of some type of chakra. No, it was because of a huge number of curse marks inscribed on it. This is a jutsu I gained from a quest after I killed 1,000 people in my multiple wars. It's called Dark Touch, and this jutsu summons a very strong curse in the user's hand that immediately transfers to the opponent upon touch and causes their body to start twisting and folding on itself, crushing it in the process. However, this jutsu is not without a downside, as the user needs to transfer this curse to a living being in the next 4 seconds. Otherwise, he would be crushed by it instead, so it's a very dangerous double-edged sword. Add to that it costs 5,000 chakra to use it when it's at level 1, so using it repeatedly is not an option unless you have huge chakra reserves. However, its destructiveness is higher than most S-rank jutsu, so these side effects are deserved, and it's best classified as a forbidden jutsu. Back to the fight. Feeling a hand grabbing his right ankle, Danzo instinctively retracted his smug smile and looked below him, and so did Fugaku and Hiruzen, who were watching this. However, what greeted him was another hand emerging from the shadow of the falling corpse, wielding a sword that was aimed at his other leg, trying to stab him. However, this time he immediately reacted by blocking the attack with his wind sword before he jumped away to assess the situation. Just as he did so, I completely emerged from the shadow, and my clone finally went puff and disappeared back while I gained back the chakra I used to create it. This kid is really sneaky. I really can't underestimate him. The level of planning he's showing is not ordinary, thought Danzo with a dark look on his face. Thank God you are okay, said Fugaku as he released a sigh of relief and retracted his Mangekyo Sharingan before anyone would notice it. Hiruzen felt the same, but he was still worried about me being stuck alone with Danzo, so he quickly yelled, "Bakorio, we only need 5 more seconds, and we will be right there with you. Try your best to buy us this much time." "Don't even think about it," said Danzo coldly, and was about to rush at me again, but he suddenly felt his leg twisting unnaturally against his will, making him fall face first to the ground, and inhale a sharp breath of air from the pain he was feeling, and ended up staring at me in fear as droplets of cold sweat started to emerge on his head, indicating the level of pain he was experiencing. "I don't need to think about it. You are already dead after all," I said with a cruel smile on my face, something that shouldn't appear on a kid. What did you do, Tiag?" Danzo tried to ask about what was happening to his body, but then his hand twisted and broke in more than one place, causing him to feel horrible pain. "You like to curse people, don't you? I just thought I should give you a taste of your own medicine," I replied without explaining what was happening to him. Danzo's groans started to slowly turn into screams, so I said with the same cruel smile, "Do you enjoy your body being twisted from both the inside and the outside?" "I guess so. After all, you already have a twisted heart. So, why not have a twisted body too, right? You are welcome, ha ha ha." However, I only got more screams as an answer, which made everyone watching feel chills at the torture that was happening in front of them, but I secretly frowned and thought it seems he's trying to figure out what I did to him. That's why he's not using the effect of Izanagi right away. But soon enough, the pain turned out too much for him to handle, even for someone like Danzo, who even experimented on his own body especially, and it reached its peak when his internal organs also started twisting and getting crushed. So, reaching his limits, his body disappeared like an illusion and started emerging again 5 meters away from me inside this wind barrier, but not before noting the curse marks that appeared and spread all over his previous body. For a strong curse like this to take effect, it's impossible for it to happen without direct contact, similar to my own immobilizing curse, thought Danzo as he looked at me warily. "Contact." Danzo quickly remembered that the first thing that started twisting and getting crushed was his left leg, and it was also the only thing the kid made direct contact with when he took him by surprise from the shadow. I can't allow him to touch me again, thought Danzo, clearly not wanting to experience that pain again. All these happened instantly in his mind before he even fully manifested. However, just as he finally did so, he found that I already inhaled a deep breath and already did the final hand sign for a jutsu he's very familiar with. Wind Release, Vacuum Sphere Jutsu. This jutsu allows the user to exhale several small but extremely fast blasts of wind chakra at the same time that scatters in different directions like a shotgun, making it very difficult for one to avoid them without injury. Due to the properties of this jutsu, the expelled blasts are capable of piercing into and potentially through an opponent's flesh. How annoying, thought Danzo as he pushed his Sharingan to the limit to check the direction of each blast, then twisted his body midair to barely dodge some of them. However, he couldn't completely dodge them and got lacerated on many parts of his body, but nothing penetrated him directly. Amazing, he's actually holding Danzo back by not giving him any time to counterattack and keeping him on the defensive, thought Hiruzen as his eyes widened in admiration, almost forgetting his job of helping Fugaka break the seal. When did such a kid appear in Konoha? Hiruzen never told me such a monster existed. Inma, who kept bashing the wind barrier nonstop, thought in shock. This is just the start of your suffering. Danzo. I thought while eyeing Danzo coldly with my next attack already in motion. Just as Danzo was dodging my vacuum sphere jutsu, I started concentrating chakra on the soles of my feet as well as my back, then transformed it into wine-type chakra and unleashed it while moving at the same, causing a huge hurricane to appear behind me, as well as a sonic boom that ravaged the ground where I was standing. This is a jutsu I created when my chakra control reached level 50, and I got as a reward from the system a new ability called Tenketsu Release, passive. Tenketsu literally means pressure point, and they are nodes from which chakra could be released, and the human body has a total of 361 points, which includes the famous 8 inner gates that Guy and Lee opened to become immensely stronger, each of which is located along the chakra pathway system. And the uniqueness of this ability is that most ninja, even experienced jonin, are only capable of releasing chakra from the tenketsu on one part of their body at a time. However, there are some special cases like the Hyuga clan who, thanks to their unique bloodline, can expel chakra from any or all of their tenketsu. However, there's a difference between expelling chakra from these tenketsu and opening them, and this difference is best explained by the gentle fist technique. This famous Hyuga taijutsu uses the advanced vision the Byakugan grants its wielder to precisely attack the tenketsu points in their opponent's body, which will cause a huge disruption in that person's chakra pathway system that would end up causing them internal damage and hinder them from using their chakra effectively. And just as how the gentle fist can hinder the chakra pathway system, the 8 gates technique is the exact opposite, as it stimulates specific points to increase the flow of the chakra to its maximum output and remove any limiters the body imposes on itself as a form of protection. And now with this new passive ability, Tenketsu Release, I can expel chakra from any Tenketsu point just like the Hyuga clan without a need for extensive training. And with this in mind, I created a jutsu to help me deal with my lack of strength and agility attributes when facing a stronger opponent while making use of my strong physical attribute. This jutsu is only possible thanks to my strong physical body, which is further enhanced by the Akimichi bloodline and my strong vitality. Otherwise, if a normal ninja tries to do this, they will be shredded to pieces by the jutsu itself. Not to mention, it also requires the person using it to be careful, because if they don't control themselves properly, they might get themselves smashed into a wall, creating a gruesome sight and dying a worthless death. Back to the fight. How troublesome, thought Danzo, as thanks to his Sharingan, he could barely see a blur appear in front of him just as he was trying to regain his balance from the previous attack, so all he can do was to cross his hands in front of his body and wait for the impact. And a strong impact it was, because just as he raised his hands, a very sharp sword came slashing down right at his head without any hesitation or mercy. However, even at this very high speed that surpassed the speed of sound, I noticed something weird which made me wish I didn't directly attack him. But it was too late. Danzo's face didn't show any emotion as my sword started cutting him in half. However, the passive ability of my Jikaninki picked up on something when I got this close to Danzo, and something sinister it was indeed. Because right after I cut him in half, hidden in the sleeves of his hands were more than 5 explosive tags already ignited, and before long. Boom. The tags created a huge explosion engulfing almost 5 meters around the area, indicating that they were of good quality, and they even shook the wind barrier, which was starting to crack thanks to Enma's continuous assault before it finally collapsed. Hiruzen and Fugaku watched this in horror, but they knew there was nothing they could have done to save me, as there was still some distance away and the barrier was still active. Then, some distance away, Danzo slowly reappeared with one of the Sharingans that was embedded in his hand, closing down forever, and mockingly said, "Tisish, finally got rid of that annoying brat. Too bad I didn't get his eyes, but I still have a whole clan to pick from, ha." His final words were directed at Fugaku, who was so angry that veins started appearing on his forehead, and they only increased when he couldn't find any trace of life within the range of the explosion. "I will never let you leave this village alive, Danzo," said Fugaku, unleashing his anger, and was about to go all out. "I will make sure you will pay the price for your actions, Danzo." Hiruzen, too, couldn't sense anyone alive within the range of the explosion and lost any traces of mercy or empathy that he might have still held in his heart for this old friend of his, as only killing intent and anger was reflected on his eyes right now. However, this is when something happened that surprised everyone, because suddenly from the debris and smoke created from the explosion, a dark blur suddenly jumped out with terrifying speed, appearing right behind the smug Danzo, who, noticing this thanks to his Sharingan, did his best to activate Izanagi before he heard the whisper of death in his ears as his head went flying through the air. "You can't kill death, but death can kill you." After a few moments, Danzo reappeared again and glanced at me in shock as he yelled, "Impossible. I scanned the area multiple times to check if you were dead, and I didn't pick any chakra signature. How the hell did you survive?" I coldly looked at him and noticed that Fugaku was finally freed from that annoying curse as he directly arrived beside me and scanned me with his eyes, noticing the small burn marks I had around my body, as well as my bloodied back that appeared as if it was scratched by a bunch of cats, and worriedly said, "Are you all right?" while completely ignoring Danzo's question. "I'm fine, don't worry. It's only superficial damage. Let's get rid of this vermin quickly," I said, while also scanning the condition of my body as I remembered what happened inside the explosion. Back at the explosion. "TCH, I'm definitely going to end up roasted if I don't act fast enough," I thought as I quickly started releasing chakra from all of my 361 Tenketsu while rotating at the same time. If not for the explosion hiding what I was doing, everyone participating in the battle would immediately recognize that I was using the Hyuga clan's famous taijutsu, the 8 trigrams palms revolving heaven, which was supposed to be only passed down to descendants of their main family. So it being used by an Uchiha would make no sense. But I used the cover of the explosion to hide it, and it allowed me to block most of the explosion. Meanwhile, the rest of the explosion that passed through my defense, thanks to my still low level of mastery of the 8 trigrams palms revolving heaven, caused me the burns that Fugaku noticed. After that, using the cover of the smoke and debris, I immediately activated my Mangekyo Sharingan, and used it to hide my presence by pretending to be dead, using Yomi no Kuni, which is why everyone believed I was done for, and tricking both the Sharingan and Hiruzen's senses. After that, I used my self-made wind-style jutsu, vacuum propelling to appear behind Danzo, and because my body was still weak, my back was damaged by it, causing what appeared to be multiple scratch marks on it. What happened next is a simple beating, with Enma transforming into his famous adamantine staff form, and Hiruzen wielding him, smashing through whatever Danzo can throw at him, including his body. Not to mention Fugaku eyeing him like a hawk, fully intent on killing him with every attack he uses, while I delivered some assistance now, and then already satisfied with my fight results, and simply waited for the eventual end of this fight, which only drew closer as more assistance arrived. It was Hayashi and the rest of the clan heads who finally dealt with the root Umbu, and with their help, Danzo finally reached his end as the final Sharingan that was on his right eye closed, and with it, the last chapter of Danzo's life was also about to close. After Hayashi and the rest of the clan heads arrived at the now devastated fight scene, they were greeted with a very bizarre scene of Danzo getting obliterated many times before his body disappears and reappears again randomly on the battlefield, which now became an unrecognizable place due to the destruction from this Kage-level fight. Buildings and houses of all sizes were flattened to the ground just from the shockwaves these people were making, to the point that Hiruzen was forced to erect a huge circular wall to stop the damage from spreading to further place in Konoha, and various clan heads soon reinforced this wall, just in case. And what was even more amazing is how, despite Danzo's very dark reputation and strength, does solidified his position as one of the strongest Kage-level ninja currently alive. He was no match for Hiruzen, using his adamantine staff, and his complete mastery of the 5 elements, or Fugaku's showcase of his very high mastery of taijutsu, jinjutsu, and ninjutsu, causing many of them to finally realize how fearsome the leader of the Uchiha is. We better not provoke the Uchiha, no matter how the village tries to turn on them, was the thought in the head of some people before they quickly woke up from their shock and started assisting in taking down Danzo. Fugaku's showcase of strength dominating even someone like Danzo showed these clan heads the meaning of the saying, "A starving camel is still bigger than a horse." After all, some of them, especially those who supported the elders, started looking down on the Uchiha when they saw them being bullied. Meanwhile, just as they were about to join in the fight, Hiruzen yelled a warning especially meant for taijutsu users, "Careful everyone, Danzo might lay a trap for you, and use a suicide tactic if you get too close to him with your attacks." After all, the incidents of the explosion I experienced, coupled with Fugaku getting paralyzed by the curse seal, were still fresh in Hiruzen's mind. And so, heeding his advice, they showered Danzo with all kinds of jutsu every time he appears until the effect of his Anaji was over. Meanwhile, as they were dealing with Danzo, Hayashi noticed the various injuries on my body and arrived at my side instantly, and seeing this familiar face, any ominous aura I had emanating from me quickly vanished like an illusion. "Bakorio, are you alright?" asked Hayashi with clear concern on his face, a face that reminded me of the time he didn't mind dying for my selfish wishes and even taught me his clan's secret techniques. So, seeing him now again, without the looming terror of war, made me both happy and guilty. Noticing the conflicted look on my face, Hayashi's concerns grew bigger, so he quickly picked me up and appeared beside a medical nin, and that was roaming around the battlefield and searching for any people injured from the battle, and said to him, "Please check his injuries and heal him." The medical nin was surprised at first seeing the burns and slashes on the kid's back. However, knowing the current situation the village was in, he assumed that I was hit by a shockwave from the battle or something, and replied, "Yes, Hayashi-sama," before he started healing me. "They are just some surface wounds. I will be fine. Why didn't you go help the rest?" I finally spoke and was honestly trying to send him away so that I can avoid facing this feeling of guilt that kept eating at my heart. "That's true. There are no internal injuries," replied the medic, glad that the kid in front of him didn't suffer anything serious, although he was surprised at my indifference to these injuries. However, the response that I got from Hayashi only made me feel worse. "Danzo has no chance of escaping. My help won't be needed, so I rather stay here until you are completely healed," Plus, there seems to be something more bothering you. Want to talk about it? I didn't know what to say, so I silently shook my head and turned my attention to the ongoing fight, using my Sharingan to look through the obstructions as my injuries were getting treated, and Hayashi, seeing my response, didn't push me any further and simply watched the fight with me, using his Byakugan. A little bit of time later, Danzo finally exhausted all his tricks and was heavily injured, but not before he caused many injuries among the ranks of the people who attacked him, showing just how incredible he is, as he took advantage of the carelessness of some people who didn't heed Hiruzen's advice about getting close to him recklessly. However, this time death was truly knocking on his door, as he didn't have a Sharingan to use Izanagi again and change reality, so his fate was set on stone. Meanwhile, thanks to my strong vitality and the medic Neen healing me, my injuries slowly disappeared, and I went to the location of the battle where Danzo is chained and on his last breath with Hayashi, and I could hear the people arguing. "What should we do with Danzo now?" asked one of the clan heads, and the people present had two answers. "We should kill him for all his heinous crimes," some said, while others wanted something else. "We should torture him and retrieve any valuable information he gained from his research that might help the village." The former simply wanted justice for all the innocent people Danzo killed while he was doing his experiments with Orochimaru, while the latter were clearly interested in the benefits Danzo gained from injecting the first Hokage cells that granted him immense chakra reserves and the power of Izanagi, which they just witnessed its miraculous effect. During all this, Danzo's eyes started swirling like a pool of darkness and said, "I'm willing to share all my research with everyone here to make Konoha stronger." Hiruzen looked at Danzo coldly, knowing that he was trying to cause trouble even at this deathbed, and annoyed by the two opinions, he looked at the destruction all around him and decided, "Let's imprison him for now. We can decide how to deal with him later after we take care of the current situation." However, before he could even continue, out of the corner of his eyes, Hiruzen noticed how Fugaku's Sharingans were still active, and he started having a bad feeling, and it quickly came true as Fugaku turned into a blur and plunged the kunai in his hand right at the temple of the surprised Danzo. Blood and brain matter splashed all over Fugaku's face and body, but he didn't mind as he kept watching as Danzo exhaled his last breath and said, "This is for all the humiliation and suffering you caused to the Uchiha clan and the rest of the world." Everyone took a deep breath before silence suddenly engulfed the area, as no one knew what to say, their brains not knowing how to process that the life of a village elder and a Kage-level ninja ended abruptly in front of them, making them wonder just how close death is. My eyes flashed a little bit as a certain familiar scent that I've been monitoring since the start of the fight finally started vanishing until my nose couldn't pick it up anymore. It seems Obito retreated for now. Well, I should keep a lookout for him until this whole situation is over, just in case, I thought, my head filled with schemes on how to catch that big masked fish. Just as Obito disappeared, Hiruzen felt the dark presence that was monitoring them and couldn't pinpoint the location of disappear, and he suddenly had a terrifying guess of what its purpose was as he linked it to Danzo's death. "It seems I'm really too indecisive," thought Hiruzen sadly, and after the silence continued for a while, in the end, he was the one to break it as he let out a long sigh and ordered an Umbu captain, "Take care of Danzo's body for now. We need to have an urgent meeting to deal with this situation." The bloodied Fugaku slowly stood up and said, "I agree. Konoha requires many changes. I am sure you have an idea of what your hesitation could have led to." Fugaku's last words were referring to the hidden presence that was watching them with clear ominous intent, yet they couldn't locate him. And even though Fugaku wasn't a sensor like Hiruzen to sense someone from such a long distance, I already told him that Danzo should be killed and why. However, Hiruzen didn't know this and only thought while letting out another sigh. So Fugaku also sensed this hidden danger and even understood his intentions. And just like that, a very important meeting that was going to decide the future direction of Konoha was about to take place. After the clan heads gathered for another urgent meeting, they received the news about how there were no casualties thanks to the intervention of the Uchiha police force, which protected the citizens just in time. After that, The meeting went on to end in a similar fashion to the first timeline, with Hiruzen stepping down from his position as Hokage and Koharu and Hamura getting removed from their position as village elders and replaced by the Hitaki clan head. However, this was only publicly, and what would happen to them in secret will never be known. As for the position of Hokage, it was again given to Fugaku, who received the support of various strong clans like the Ino-Shika-Cho Alliance and the Hyuga, and he immediately gave out multiple orders. The first was for the people in the meeting to collaborate in fixing the damage the village received during the fight against Danzo. The second was for the Umbu to raid the root headquarters and apprehend all their members and retrieve any important that they could get from the various experiments Danzo did. After all, they couldn't let those sacrifices go to waste. The third was for the Uchiha clan to return to the core of the village and not stay on the outskirt of the village like some banished criminal. Meanwhile, while these decisions were being made, I went to check on Naruto, who must be worried from all that's happening in the village, as he basically didn't have anyone to rely on physically and my injuries were already healed, unlike the first time where I was forced to spend 5 days at the hospital. However, I was satisfied with how things went because I didn't have to involve Naruto in this mess or be forced to expose the existence of Minato and Kushina, and we even managed to keep Fugaku's Mangekyo Sharingan hidden. This way our potential enemies won't be prepared for us in the future, while I will be prepared for most of them. My eyes couldn't help but flash coldly thinking about all the people I fought in the war and ended up killing or almost getting killed by causing many people I was passing by to look at me warily. Soon, I reached Naruto's house, while keeping my senses spread out all the way in case Obito tries to make a move to coerce those stupid elders until we deal with them properly. Arriving at Naruto's apartment, I knocked on the door 4 times. I could hear some footsteps approaching the door, as well as some people watching me closely. It seems the Umbu guarding Naruto are tenser than usual because of what happened, huh? Well, as long as they don't act stupidly, anything is good, I thought as the footsteps approached the door, and I heard a voice say, "Is it Bakorio?" asked Naruto with a clearly excited voice. Naruto didn't have some crazy senses. The reason he guessed it was me is because I always knock 4 times on the door, and he seems to have gotten used to it. "Of course it's me," I replied with a chuckle. Getting his confirmation that it was me, Naruto opened the door at the speed of light and directly looked at me happily. I also had a warm smile on my face, but when I saw some traces of tears on his face, my smile slowly vanished, and it made me almost drop the cake I bought for him on the way here from the sheer anger I was feeling. I don't remember this happening before. Did I miss it because I was in the hospital at that time? I thought before I said calmly, "Let's get inside and have a talk. I also bought you a cake." Naruto's eyes brightened at the mention of the cake and quickly led me inside while saying, "Brother Bakorio is the best." After we got inside and sat down facing each other, I finally asked the question that kept bothering me. "Naruto, did something happen? I can tell you were crying before I came here," I asked in concern. Naruto seemed embarrassed a little bit when he understood that I noticed he was crying, but he soon seemed to gain some courage and finally told me what was wrong. "The third Hokage came to visit me this morning and said that I can't meet you or anyone from the Uchiha clan anymore, otherwise it would bring harm to you and your clan." So it's all about this, huh? It seems I missed it the first time because Naruto probably was consoled by his parents, and when he met me, he probably didn't want to worry me, so he made sure I didn't notice anything wrong with him. And not to mention the situation was already solved at that time, and the new changes were already announced. Meanwhile, now they were still in the meeting trying to decide how to solve this mess. However, this still warmed my heart a little seeing how worried this kid was about me, so I patted his head and said with a smile, "Everything is fine now, and don't worry, no one can force you to do anything against your will as long as I'm alive. Don't you believe in me?" Naruto looked at me without any hesitation in his wide blue eyes and yelled, "I believe in you." His excitement brought a genuine smile to my face, so I held my pinky finger to him and said, "Let's make it a promise." Naruto excitedly extended his pinky finger too and said, "It's a promise." Meanwhile, just as our fingers touched, inside Naruto's seal space, Kushina and Minato were watching my interaction with Naruto happily, and they seemed relieved that I solved the problem that was caused by the elders. However, Kushina was still worried, knowing full well how those people regarded Jinchuriki as no more than a tool to be used or discarded when needed, and they wouldn't allow for someone to get too close to it and affect their manipulation over it. Minato, do you think everything is all right? Those stubborn elders won't give up easily, said Kushina to Minato with a worried face. Minato looked at her calmly before he seemed to be gazing at something far away. He was looking at Bakorio while thinking, why do I feel he's changed? Before he responded to her with a smile. I trust that Bakorio is smart enough to not endanger his and his clan's lives with his actions. So, him being here means that the situation is safe. You also heard the commotion that happened in the village earlier. He or the Uchiha might have something to do with it. With a still worried face, Kushina replied, Fine, I will trust your judgment for now. But if anything happens to my little Naruto, make sure to be ready to pay for it. Minato couldn't help but swallow his saliva nervously as he thought, what did I do wrong to deserve this? I'm worried as much as you, if not more. However, just then, Kurama, who was standing behind them, suddenly stood up and growled just when I touched Naruto's finger, and both Minato and Kushina noticed this, so they turned to him and asked. What's wrong, Kurama? Asked Kushina curiously, while Minato waited for a response with narrowed eyes as he thought for Kurama to react this way. Grrrr, it's that brat Bakorio. I can feel a terrifying killing intent inside his heart. I only saw this in those who experienced countless wars and killed a giant number of people, said Kurama. Did you not feel this in him before? Asked Minato seriously. No, and I could tell it's still fresh, and he still can't control his emotions enough to hide it like you do, said Kurama with a snort before he returned back and sat down again and closed his eyes, seemingly not interested in this anymore. His thoughts, however, were a different story. Minato, what's going on? Asked Kushina, who's now worried about the safety of her child in this unpredictable situation. Minato simply looked at the two kids interacting happily while eating the cake Bakorio brought with him before he sighed, and replied, I wish I could answer your question. As some people were perplexed by the huge amount of fresh killing intent in Bakorio's heart that Kurama felt thanks to his gift in sensing negative emotions. Bakorio, on the other hand, finally felt reassured when Naruto was back to his usual cheerful personality, so he said, Naruto, I have a suggestion. Naruto had a puzzled look on his face as he replied, What is it? I want you to come live with me, I said with a smile as I looked at this lonely kid. Naruto froze for a second, not knowing how to respond to such a suggestion that was a dream come true to him. However, sometimes what the mind can't fathom is easily understood by the heart, and this was very evident as his big blue eyes suddenly started becoming watery, and before long, tears starting falling down from them. Oh really? Can I come live with you? Sniff sniff, replied Naruto. Naruto's reaction didn't surprise me. After all, imagine being shunned by the people around you all the time and be forced to live alone at a young age. Of course, his situation is infinitely better now, where he can at least communicate with his parents from time to time, so the loneliness in his heart was slowly vanishing. However, in the end, when he leaves that sealed space, he would still find himself in his house alone with no one to talk to, and this always left an empty spot in his heart. This is why this suggestion was so meaningful to him, and it brought him both joy and disbelief. Joy at the thought of living with who he considers his best friend, and disbelief at just how great his life was changing to the point that it all seemed like a dream. I looked at Naruto and gently nodded as I said, Yes, once this situation is settled, you will start living with me in the new Uchiha compound. Great. Naruto jumped from his seat in happiness and couldn't wait for the situation to quickly be solved and for a new chapter in his life to start. Hopefully one without loneliness. Meanwhile, inside the sealed space, Kushina looked at Minato worriedly wanting to say something, but kept holding back. Minato of course noticed her and understood the emotional dilemma she was facing, and he could only console her by saying, "We can decide once we talk with Bakorio." "Okay," nodded Kushina, worriedly showing a part of her personality no one would believe this fiery and aggressive woman could have in her. Minus 2 hours later. A huge announcement was spread throughout Konoha that brought great joy to the Uchiha clan. It was the announcing of the retirement of Hiruzen Sarutobi from his position as Hokage and being replaced by none other than Wicked Eye Fugaku Uchiha, becoming Konoha's fifth Hokage, as well as the first Uchiha Hokage in the history of the village. And soon after, an order was sent to all the Uchiha members living in the outskirts of the village to start packing their belongings, for they were going to move to the center of the village, which left them feeling surreal. "I never thought I would live this long to see the Uchiha clan getting its former glory back and more," said an old man from the Uchiha clan with deep emotions in his eyes. "Indeed, Fugaku-say, no fifth Hokage-sama really didn't let us down, and we can finally be treated as part of the village without getting the short end of the stick all the time," said another member also emotionally. Gratefulness and praises were all the Uchiha members felt for Fugaku, who actually managed to not only recover the clan's position in Konoha, but also becoming a Hokage. All the sacrifices the Uchiha clan was forced to make, all the trickeries and mistrust they had to face from the rulers of the village other than Hashirama since the time Madara betrayed the village. They were all finally over, and hopefully, they won't happen again. After the announcement was made, I went back to the Uchiha compound to get whatever valuables I had in my old house, and Naruto wanted to tag along, so I brought him with me. After we arrived at this ruined apartment, I picked up a huge bag and started packing it with my clothes and filling it with the money I earned from my pastry shop before it was closed. Then, I suddenly stopped in front of my closet, and Naruto noticed that I had a weird expression on my face as I looked at a simple wooden box inside of it, so he looked at it curiously before he innocently asked me, "What's inside that box?" I had a complicated expression on my face as I looked at this simple box that was here since the first day I transmigrated to this world. Thanks to the memories I gained from the previous owner of this body, I understood that this wooden box contained some mementos left by the kid's dead parents, and out of respect, I decided not to touch them, as they are not meant for me. This is the least I could do for the kid and his parents, as I'm now using his body. At first, I didn't care much about it, but now seeing this unchanged wooden box made me realize just how much this world forced me to change, which made me feel much more complicated about it right now. Noticing that I was spacing out, Naruto became worried and decided to nudge me a little so I don't keep ignoring him while saying, "Is everything okay?" This worked because I finally escaped from my thought and replied to him, "I'm fine. This is the only thing left to me by my parents. It contains a memento from both of them, and it brought some memories back, that's all." "That's right, Bakorio's parents aren't alive, huh? And he can't even meet them like I do, so he must be very lonely. Yet, he never complains about it." Naruto felt sad for his friend as he thought of this. What he didn't realize was that he misunderstood what Bakorio's experiencing, and this misunderstanding was also shared by Minato, Kushina, and Kurama, who were creepily watching through Naruto's senses. "Maybe it's not a bad idea for him and Naruto to live together after all," said Minato to Kushina, who was feeling her motherly instincts screaming, telling her to hug this pitiful kid. While in truth, loneliness was never Bakorio's concern. He lived for a long time with only loneliness and despair keeping him company, and what truly always concerned him was what happened to his heart. It made him realize that the only thing worse than a heart drowning in darkness is a heart that gets used to it. And this was his biggest mistake and downfall, because the moment he got used to it, the feeling of happiness was ripped from his heart, and the people around him only made it worse. However, the light of hope will always shine through any obstacle. The irony, however, is that it led him to ask for death to release him from his misery. "What did your parents leave you?" asked Naruto, who couldn't handle the silence that filled the room curiously. I broke away from my thoughts and looked at the nervous Naruto, which made me regain my cool, and asked with a smile, "You want to see?" Naruto's curiosity ignited because his parents' identity was always hidden from him, so sadly, he wasn't left with anything from them other than a huge monster sealed inside him. "Yes, please, please," said Naruto while nodding repeatedly. "Fine," I replied with a smile to this kid as I slowly opened this box for the first time. What just happened?" I thought in surprise, because the moment I opened the box, I could swear I felt something wash over me for less than an instant, but it quickly vanished without a trace, and if not for my terrifying reaction speed, I wouldn't have sensed it at all. "What's going on here?" I thought as my hands that tried to open the box froze, and I turned to look at Naruto, whose eyes were still filled with curiosity, seemingly oblivious to what just happened, and decided to investigate this later. After all, from my experience with that dark mist, I understood that there are some things in this world that most people can't detect, yet they are lurking around in the shadows. Putting this matter on hold for now, I turned my attention back to the box, and I saw a letter and a necklace, the two items that appeared countless times in the memories I got from Bakorio, despite his short-lived life. After all, before this little Uchiha kid got ill and died, he would always turn back to this little box and hold the necklace in his small hands close to his chest and cry his loneliness and sadness out alone in this little room. The necklace drew my attention immediately for some reason, and to be honest, it was one of the most beautiful pieces of jewelry I have ever seen in both my past and present lives. It was made of what appeared to be a silver chain, and hanging from it was a pale white crystal-like sphere filled with white engravings all over it, and a single dark horizontal black line of engraving surrounding it. However, what drew my attention to it wasn't only its beauty, which I already expected. "Wow, it's so cool. And this letter looks old," said Naruto as his eyes started shining while he was staring at the necklace and felt mesmerized by its beauty. "This is the memento my parents left me, and according to the letter, it's an heirloom that has been passed down in our family for a long time. Yet no one knows how it was acquired in the first place," I replied to him, basically repeating the story that was told in the letter without even touching or reading it, as I already knew its content. Of course, I can't read yet as I was still a kid, or more specifically the previous owner of my body couldn't as he was just starting to learn how to, and not to mention me. I came from a whole different world. But I knew the content of this letter because the previous Bakorio got this letter read to him by his previous caretakers many times when he was part of an orphanage before he was transferred here to live on his own. "I think you should wear it, Bakorio. It would look good on you," said Naruto with clear anticipation in his voice, which made me smile at this silly kid. However, for some reason, I kept having an uneasy feeling towards this necklace, especially since I couldn't shake off the previous feeling I felt, so I decided to try testing something first. "You know, Naruto, the origin of this necklace has always been a mystery in my family for generations. And even though it has all these weird engravings that make it appear almost like some kind of tool, its use was never found out, so it was assumed that it was only a precious jewelry, but..." At this point I paused before I continued with a mysterious tone, "but I feel like it might actually be a priceless treasure." Naruto was very intrigued by this story and quickly forgot that he wanted me to wear it, and excited by this new mystery, he quickly said, "So, how do we find out what's it for?" I put out a pondering look before I said, "You know what? I think I might know some people that could help us find out." Naruto's eyes lit up and said, "Really? Who are they? Let's quickly go get them." "Just how dense can you be?" I thought with dark lines almost appearing on my face, but I quickly masked them with a smile and said, "I'm talking about your parents. After all, they are both masters in seals, and they might be able to decipher what these engravings are for." Naruto rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment and said, "That's true, I totally forgot about that. Let's ask them quickly. I also want to ask that stupid fox, but I know you still don't get along with him, so I'm not telling you this he." "Good. Here we go," I said as I put my hand on his abdomen and started injecting some of my chakra into the seal, and before long, my vision changed to that of a damp and dark sewer-like place that I haven't visited for a long time. The first thing I noticed is Minato and Kushina, who were eyeing Naruto and I with different expressions, but I turned a blind eye to their weirdness because I missed them a little bit. Minato had his usual gentle smile on his face, and I couldn't help but greet him with a smile too as I arrived beside them, and said, "Yo, long time no see, Minato. How are you doing?" "I'm good. Thank you for taking care of Naruto," replied Minato still with a smile on his face, and I replied to him jokingly, while giving a side glance at Kushina. "Oh, don't mention it. It seems Kushina didn't drive you crazy yet." I don't like getting thanked for something I decide to do myself, so I quickly changed the subject by teasing Kushina. However, the angry outburst I was expecting from teasing this usually impulsive woman didn't arrive. Instead, she appeared thoughtful, which made me surprised as I also could tell thanks to the passive of my Jikaninki that she was feeling conflicted for some reason, but I decided not to pry too much into it, leaving them to their own privacy. What I didn't notice, however, is that the moment I glanced at Kushina, Minato's blue eyes lit up for an instant before they turned back to normal, as if nothing happened. "Ha ha ha, no. Kushina is as cute as ever. If one thing, she's making me feel alive, even in the state we are in right now," replied Minato. Hey, let's get to the point quickly." Naruto couldn't wait anymore and decided to ruin my happy reunion with his impatience. "TCH, you can't wait at all, can you?" I said as I poked him on the forehead, like how Itachi does to Sasuke, making him pout a little cutely before I said to Minato and Kushina, "Well, I guess you guys already know what Naruto's talking about. Do you have any idea what those engraving on the necklace are for?" Remembering the beautiful necklace that I just showed to Naruto, Kushina finally broke out from her thoughtfulness and started paying more attention to our conversation, as she really fell in love with the beauty of that necklace. "First of all, that was truly a beautiful necklace. You should take good care of it for the sake of your parents," replied Minato seriously before he continued with an embarrassed look while rubbing the back of his head. As for the engravings on it, both me and Kushina were discussing them the moment we saw them. However, unfortunately, they don't resemble any seals we know of, so they might be simply for decorative purposes. Father, are you sure?" said Naruto, who was clearly disappointed by the necklace not turning out as the treasure he hoped for. And this time Kushina was the one who apologetically shook her head and said, "Just like your father said, it's unfortunate, but they don't resemble any seals we know of." As Naruto kept complaining childishly, I actually grew thoughtful for a moment before I said, "What about you dumb tails? Do you know anything?" Hearing what I said, Kurama, who was laying down peacefully and ignoring us all this time, suddenly raised his and yelled at me, "What did you just call me?" His yell alone caused a very strong wind that caused our hair to start flying through the air. "He can be a great air conditioner," I thought as I ignored his outburst and asked again, "Just answer me. Do you know anything?" I noticed Kurama's eyes darting up to the right for an instant as he said, "Why would I know about your stupid necklace? Don't bother me again," before he laid down once more. Minato also noticed this, and we both thought of the same thing. "He's lying, huh? But why?" We both pretended we didn't notice, and I said, "Well, it's unfortunate, but I have to go now and pack my things. Talk to you guys later." "Okay, take care," said Minato with a smile while inside. He had only one question burning in his mind from the first time I spoke that ignited many of his previous doubts. "Why did you say it was a long time? We only met yesterday." When I left the seal space, Kushina immediately shot Kurama a terrifying glare and angrily started reprimanding him for insulting my necklace. "Kurama, Why were you so mean to Bakorio about his family's necklace? You know it's the only thing left to him by his parents, don't you? And you should also understand why his parents aren't here anymore." Kurama started squirming in distress, recalling that he was the cause of that kid being parentless right now before he started yelling back, "Shut up, you idiot. The way I talk is none of your business." Minato simply watched all of this unfolding without saying anything while clearly deep in thought. But then he noticed Kushina's hair starting to stand up, and he knew things weren't going to end well, so he quickly arrived behind her and held back as she almost rushed at Kurama to hit him while yelling, "What the hell did you call me? It seems you want to get beaten." And Minato let go of me. "I will teach this arrogant fox how to speak to an elegant and smart woman like me." Minato couldn't help but become bewildered for an instant. "Smart, I can give you that, but elegant." Minato gave Kushina a long look as he kept searching which part of her was elegant, and it brought his doom when she noticed it, because the next thing that happened is all of Kushina's anger seemed to disappear as she smiled warmly at Minato and said with an eerily calm voice, "It seems you don't believe I'm smart and elegant." Minato, seeing the scary look on her face and devilish tone, started feeling his spine tingling as sweat started dripping from his head, and quickly said, "Of course I belie dash." However, before he could even finish his sentence, all the calmness disappeared from Kushina's face as her long red hair rose in the air, while separated into 9 parts like Kurama's tails, and she sent him flying through the air by a devastating uppercut. Kurama, who was looking at this, started having a bad feeling seeing the gruesome fate of her own husband that loved her so much. And it only grew when Kushina started slowly walking toward him with the same creepy smile on her face she just had with Minato. "Stay away from me," said Kurama as he sprung up to his feet and started backing away slowly. Yet this red-haired nightmare didn't answer his pleas. Meanwhile, outside the seal space, I started packing the rest of my belongings while thinking about Kurama's reaction when I mentioned the necklace, and it bothered me that he was hiding something from me. Meanwhile, I was completely oblivious that doubt was raising in Minato's heart, who laying down on the seal space, pretending to be dead from Kushina's punch about my wrong perception of time and the added killing intent in my heart, and he already started connecting some dots. What could be the reason for him to lie to me? I was really puzzled by Kurama's reaction. I don't think he cares much about these things to the point that he would lie to hide this information from me, unless he was instructed to do so. When my thoughts reached this point, my eyes couldn't help but light up. Could it be something related to the Sage of Six Paths? This intrigued me, and I decided to investigate this item more in the future. "I will make sure to have you spill out everything you know about this in the future," I thought coldly. A few minutes later, I finally gathered my belongings, which I didn't have much of in the first place, since the boy previously was quite poor, and not to mention living, he was barely surviving. Then I started walking with Naruto to the new Uchiha compound that was near the center of the village. There, we were greeted by a very enthusiastic Sasuke who was accompanied by his mother Mikoto, and I couldn't help but smile warmly when I saw them as I said, "Hey there you guys, how are you?" However, before anyone could respond, Mikoto quickly rushed to my side and started checking my body with a frown on her face that only started loosening when she found out that I was completely fine. Letting out a long sigh, Mikoto hugged me and said, "I'm glad you are okay. Fugaka said you were injured in the fight against Danzo, and that Hayashisen took care of you, but my heart couldn't rest until I saw you with my own eyes." My eyes widened at this, and I simply stood there frozen as time seemed to go slow as this scene kept repeating itself inside my head until I finally let out a tired sigh and thought, nothing really beats having someone that truly cares for you without any ulterior motives. Then I simply enjoyed this hug that lifted some of the weight on my heart. "Don't worry, I'm fine. It was only some superficial injuries that were quickly treated by a medical need," I said with a smile to ease her worries. However, after her heart was at ease, she started reprimanding me with a serious face. "Bakorio, you shouldn't involve yourself in the adults' fights. You already did too much for the clan, so please promise me you wouldn't act recklessly again like this." I could see that her eyes were filled with determination and she wasn't going to accept a no for an answer, so I let out another sigh and said, "Fine, I won't as long as it's not something that endangers the people close to me." She hesitated for a moment before she nodded, while feeling happy inside at how much I cared for them even though I didn't show it a lot before she said, "Okay, I can accept this." Then she turned to Naruto and started rubbing his head gently as she said, "Hi there, Naruto. Are you here helping your friend move to his new house?" Naruto nodded enthusiastically as he said, "Yes," before he shot a smug look at Sasuke, which annoyed him. "Good boy," said Mikoto with a smile. But then I followed by saying, "Naruto's not only helping me move my stuff, but he's going to start living with me from now on." "How do I have to look at his stupid face every day now?" said Sasuke, who was displeased by this decision at the thought of having his rival living near him. Naruto started mocking Sasuke by sticking out his tongue and saying, "Boo, you are just jealous I'm going to live with Bakorio he." And just like that, they were about to start fighting in the middle of the road, forcing Mikoto to hold each of them back and gave them a good lecture about how to behave until we arrived at my new house. Unsurprisingly, it was the same big house that was facing the clan head's house, and Naruto quickly entered while marveling at how amazing it looked while Sasuke only looked at him like an idiot trying to stop him from destroying anything. Left alone with Mikoto, she watched as I had a small smile on my face while watching Naruto and Sasuke bickering with each other, so she said jokingly with a pout, "You know I was planning on adopting Naruto after this situation is over, but now you stole him from me." I shook my head at her with the same smile on my face as I said, "It's about time this kid experiences some happiness in his life, and I'm sure he would have been as excited about living with you as he is right now with me, and maybe more. After all, you are a great mother." Mikoto was touched by what I said, so she smiled happily and rubbed my head lovingly, and even my Jikininki picked up the clear happiness she was feeling right now as she said, "Now that you are living this close to us, make sure to visit us more often, okay?" I didn't mind this suggestion as I enjoyed her cooking, so, without any hesitation, I replied to her, "No problem." As we entered my new house, hoping this time I would have some peace in my life. After settling in my new house alongside Naruto, I finally had some time to clear my mind from all the continuous troubling events that kept happening one after the other in my life. Who would have thought my life would change so dramatically like this? I thought as I laid down on my bed while staring at the ceiling absent-mindedly. From traveling to this new world and gaining a new body, that of a kid no less, then becoming a ninja and against all odds even force myself to go into terrible wars to hone my skills and experience the cruelty of this world in person. Well, at least now I can take care of myself and the people around me, I thought with a smile before suddenly my face froze. I really changed, I said as I let out a long sigh and got up from my bed and looked out of the window, letting the light of the morning sun and the cool breeze wash over my tired mind. After enjoying myself for a while, I went ahead and washed my face to completely wake up before I went downstairs to the kitchen and started preparing breakfast for both Naruto and me. It's been a long time since I cooked something. I thought before I recalled that I didn't at all during my time in the war, as I kept going back in time and didn't have any appetite in the first place. Once I finished, I went back upstairs and opened the door of the room that was adjacent to mine to wake up the peacefully sleeping Naruto. He was wearing a gray pajama and a sleeping hat and hugging his cover as he slept on his side. "How cute, I almost don't want to wake you up," I thought with a warm smile before it turned into a wicked one and I suddenly started talking in a loud and urgent voice. "Naruto, Naruto, quickly wake up." Naruto opened his drowsy eyes and sprung up to a sitting position and asked hurriedly with a concerned face, "What's wrong? Did something happen?" Seeing him wake up, the urgent expression on my face slowly vanished, and what replaced it was a mischievous one as I said, "Nope, nothing. Time for breakfast, that's all." I could see his eyes watering a little as he pouted and said, "Bakorio, you are so mean. I won't talk to you again." I shrugged at him and said, "Okay then, I will eat all that delicious breakfast I made by myself." I secretly manipulated the wind around me to drive the smell of the food to this room, and as I expected the moment he smelled it, all his sadness disappeared and was replaced by a thoughtful expression. I watched him silently as I thought I won't get tricked again like the first time, You little trickster koala. Indeed, the reason I woke him in this traumatic way wasn't because I just wanted to have fun at his expense, although that was part of it. The other reason is that the first time Naruto lived with me, I experienced many times how this kid would do anything to extend his sleeping time. So, this time I decided to destroy his hopes from the start even if I had to use such mean tactics. Soon enough, I started hearing a growling sound coming from his stomach, and I was pretty sure that it wasn't that stupid fox sealed inside it. Humph. Naruto snorted, and seemed to be going to lay down again on his bed, but just as he turned around, he picked up his pillow and threw it at my face. Bam! He got you, said Naruto before he ran away to fill his stomach. I of course let him hit me to make him happy, otherwise he couldn't have landed a hit on me in a million years. However, just as he reached the door of the room, he found me already waiting outside of it staring at him with a frown. Ghost, said Naruto, and I couldn't help but start getting some dark line when I thought that he's technically not that wrong. Go wash yourself first, I said as I pointed to the bathroom, and he reluctantly nodded while I went and organized his messy bed before I waited for him downstairs at the table. Once he arrived, we enjoyed our breakfast, and Naruto happily said, "Wah, so delicious," every time he tried something. And once he finished everything, he rubbed his now full belly with a satisfied expression, making me smile again. Then, I also put down my chopsticks and surprised him as I created a shadow clone and ordered it to wash the dishes. Amazing, you don't even have to work, Naruto said as he looked at me with envy. Yes, it's indeed a very useful jutsu. I'm sure you will learn it easily in the future, I replied with a smile, causing Naruto to nod excitedly. Now then, Naruto, I want to talk to you parents privately, so stay here for a moment, okay? I said with a serious expression. Noticing this, Naruto struggled a little, clearly wanting to know what's so secret that he can't hear us talk about. But seeing my serious expression, he decided it's better to agree, so, without further waiting, I put my hand on his abdomen and entered the seal space. Inside the seal space, I found Minato and Kushina staring at me with weird expressions on their faces, and I could immediately guess that something was weird, especially when even the usually uncaring Kurama was also perking his ears. Yo, good morning you guys, what's with the weird faces? I said with a calm face, going straight to the point. It's really pointless to keep hiding this from him, thought Minato, and he noticed Kushina looking at him with a worried face, so he let out a sigh before his face suddenly turned calm. This calmness was his biggest strength, never losing his cool, even in the hardest of situations. I calmly observed the changes in their faces, and before long, I heard Minato's response, Bakorio. Can you explain to us why is it that Kurama feels a huge amount of killing intent in your heart? So this is what's going on, huh? I thought as my eyes widened a little in surprise, and I shot a glare at this troublesome fox. Now how should I explain this? I started thinking up a lie, but I was suddenly cut off from my thinking by Minato, who was still looking at me with his eerily calm eyes as he said, "Please don't lie to us, Bakorio-kun. We're willing to accept whatever burden you are hiding. Please trust and share with us what's going on." Minato's expression was very sincere at the moment, and Kushina also had a similar expression as she held her hands close to her chest and nodded at me, agreeing with her husband. This is troublesome, very troublesome. I started struggling on my head on if I should tell them or not, and this was very clear from how my facial expression kept twisting, and this lasted for 10 seconds until I let out a long sigh and said, "You two are very dear to me, and I don't want to lie to you." Minato and Kushina nodded, believing me. However, there are two reasons for why I hold that killing intent in my heart, and they are both something I can't disclose easily. This is not because I don't want to tell you. No, it's because the time is not right. Kushina suddenly pouted but didn't say anything. Minato's calm blue eyes, however, flickered for an instant, but no one would notice unless they are true masters of reading expressions. So my guess was right. It seems Bakorio is more mysterious than I thought, was all Minato could think as remembered the only time I blinked my eyes twice in my explanation. When I mentioned time, after he started connecting the dots inside his head, Minato started wondering what could be the reason I couldn't directly tell him what's going on, but he decided to put his trust in me and replied with a warm smile. I see. Well, I hope you can open up with us in the future. You are our friend after all. Kushina followed with a serious face and said, That's true, Bakorio-kun. We'll always be here for you and share your burden anytime. Sorry guys, I couldn't tell you. After all, even I don't know exactly what's the origin of that thing or what it can do, so I rather keep as much of my secrets hidden from it as possible. I thought as I remembered the incident of discovering an orb of darkness hiding inside my heart, and the terrible fear I felt when I heard a certain sinister whisper, I'm always watching you from where you can't perceive. Because of that event, I became determined not to reveal any of my secrets as much as possible even to these people that I trust, until the time to deal with that unknown danger comes, and I will make sure it regrets messing with me. Thank you guys for your understanding. It means a lot to me, I said with a smile. Then I turned to a certain annoying fox, and without giving him any time to react, he found himself getting hit by a water bullet in the head. Growling, Kid, you want to get eaten? Says Kurama in an angry voice while using his hand to rub the top of his head that was hit by me. I've come here today with some good news, but it seems you don't want to be unsealed, so never mind then, I said with a wicked smile before I turned my attention to Minato and Kushina. What are you talking about, Dash? Hearing me mention unsealing him, Kurama hurriedly tried to ask me about it, but I ignored him and cut him off right away as I said, I got you guys a jutsu that can help you use your spirit forms better. Look into my eyes. My eyes started transforming into my 3-tomo Sharingan, and Minato and Kushina simply looked at the annoyed Kurama helplessly before they looked at my eyes. A lot of information was transferred to them, everything they would need to know on how to learn and use the spirit transformation jutsu. This information includes the hand signs required, along with notes from both the future Kushina and Minato who trained personally in this jutsu. And I even got some of the information Tsunade had about this jutsu that she was told by the man who mastered it, Dan Kato. So, it was no surprise that both Minato and Kushina were extremely surprised at the detailed description of the spirit transformation jutsu, and they understood right away that with this, it would save them at least 80% of the time to learn it. Minato was the first to finish processing all the information, and he simply gave me a deep look as he felt his thoughts about me having an ability related to time were much more true. As for Kushina, she woke up, her face full of surprise, and immediately said, Bakorio, this is amazing. How did you get such a detailed way to train and use something as rare as the spirit transformation jutsu? I shrugged my shoulders and said, It was all luck. I was training one day with one of my shadow clones outside the village, and I stumbled upon a notebook that belonged to Dan Kato, and I found these things in it. Hey kid, stop wasting time and tell him Dash. Kurama's hopes rose again when he saw Minato's and Kushina's reactions to the jutsu I gave them and got even more excited at the thought of getting free. However, he was interrupted again, this time by Kushina who seemed surprised. Dan Kato's notebook. Isn't that Lady Tsunade's lover that died in the Third Ninja War? I nodded at her and said, Indeed, just like how Minato is the only person who could learn the second Hokage's Flying Thunder God jutsu, Dan Kato was the only person capable of learning his spirit transformation jutsu. I see. We were really lucky, said Kushina happily, before she followed by saying in a serious manner, But you should give that notebook to Tsunade-sama, if you ever meet her, okay? Yes, I replied, noticing that Minato was still looking at me with the same look since earlier. It seems he's already guessed it. Well, I was planning on doing this subtly, but now it doesn't matter anymore. I thought before I gave Kurama a glare and said to Minato, Minato, look into my eyes again. Minato did so without saying a word, and before long, he found his head filled with 3 Fuinjutsu. They were the sun seal that grants its user the ability to break free from most Jinjutsu, the 7-star seal that creates a no-chakra zone around its user that makes it very hard to seal them, and finally, the third one was the Roaring Thunder God Jutsu that I stole from Satoshi Yukisake. The first 2 are based on the theories we had to help Kurama. As for the last one, it seems Bakorio-kun really has an ability related to either seeing the future or time traveling. The first 2 Fuinjutsu surprised him, but he actually could guess how they came to be. The last one, however, shocked him as it was almost tailor-made for his style, because if he learns this Fuinjutsu, his fighting prowess would increase exponentially, and he will be even more destructive and terrifying. Make it look like you came up with them, was the last thing I said to Minato inside the Jinjutsu before I dispelled it, and my eyes started turning back to normal. What's going on? Said Kushina, curious at what could actually make Minato, who rarely loses his calm, become so surprised and even shocked. Oh, it's just a few injutsu I found out that could interest Minato and increase his fighting arsenal. Anyways, Naruto's waiting for me. I need to go now. Hey kid, wait, yelled Kurama hurriedly. What are you yelling for? I said with a disinterested look on my face, which made Kushina and Minato chuckle a little. Growling, tell me, what news do you have about when I will be unsealed, said Kurama expectantly. Oh, now that you mention it, I indeed had some good news for you. But you don't seem to want to hear them, I said with a smirk which annoyed Kurama even more, so this time he decided to threaten me. Tell me, kid, or I won't give you any of my chakra again. What the hell? Are you my girlfriend trying to threaten me with sex or something? I thought, and I couldn't help but laugh at it, which made Kurama even more agitated for not being taken seriously. Quad, hey brat, what are you laughing at? The wind from his scream almost blew me away, and seeing that I was pushing Kurama too far, Minato tried to meditate as he arrived between us, and said with a nervous smile. Bakorio, why don't you let it go this time and tell him the good news? I looked at this dumb, huge fox with a smile and said, of course I can tell him. However, there's going to be a price. Kurama finally calmed down and decided to also take a step back and said, what do you want, kid? Poor Kurama. He really wants to be freed, thought Kushina, feeling pity for Kurama, who was getting played by a kid. However, she was surprised by what happened next. Because, the moment Kurama finished speaking, the smile disappeared from my face as I looked at him dead in the eyes and said, I want you to tell me everything you are hiding about my family's heirloom. Kurama's eyes contracted a little, and his expression froze. Meanwhile, Minato looked at this and let out a sigh as he thought, so he also noticed, huh? Growling. Kurama kept growling while looking at me while deep in thought, as his eyes kept flickering from time to time in clear struggle. Meanwhile, Kushina shot Minato a curious look, and when she noticed that he was simply looking at this calmly, she immediately understood that he knew all along about this, but didn't say anything to her. So, her curious look turned into a cold smile as she started thinking about how to punish him first this later, and it immediately caused Minato to feel chills down his spine, so he turned and looked at her apologetically. Unfortunately, that cold smile did not disappear from Kushina's face, which made Minato understand that his fate isn't going to be any good. Sigh, why is it that I get in trouble for other people's doing? Thought Minato, sad at his own bad luck. Fine kid, I will tell you. But you will have to unseal me as soon as possible, said Kurama after he was done with his long internal struggle. I let out a sigh of relief as my curiosity will finally be satisfied, and replied with a smile, okay, don't worry, I can promise you'll be released in less than a month. Minato can attest to what I'm saying, right Minato? Minato nodded and looked at Kurama. I don't think we will need a whole month, 2 weeks at most, and it's going to be done. Kushina felt surprised at this statement as she was still unaware that Bakorio transferred the completed seals to her husband, but she decided to deal with him when this is all over. Kurama, on the other hand, nodded excitedly at the good news. Ha ha ha. This good. Fine, then I will tell you what I know about that necklace. But I need to warn you. This is something beyond even me to handle. So are you sure you want to know about it? We were all surprised at just how dangerous this heirloom was turning out to be, but I nodded anyway. I'm ready. Please start explaining." "Fine then," said Kurama as his expression turned somehow nostalgic as he started narrating his story. A story I knew of, but this was not the case for Kushina and Minato. A long time ago existed a man that was hailed with many different names. Some called him the Sage of the Six Paths, some called him the ancestor of Ninshu, and he was the first person to invent and teach the way to use chakra to the people of this world. Kurama paused here smugly to see our reaction, but he was disappointed when he found out that Minato was the only one taking him seriously. Because couldn't care less about this point of the story, so I was spacing out thinking about what to make for lunch. Meanwhile, Kushina looked at Kurama with a dark face and snapped at him. "You kept pretending you were hiding some sort of secret all this time, just to tell us the story of the Sage of Six Paths? Plus, did he even really exist?" Having his ego take such a huge strike from the lack of interest everyone seemed to have other than Minato, so Kurama ended up releasing a disappointed sigh and said, "No, it's not merely a legend. After all, I met him personally. Anyways, you are a hopeless case, woman, so I can't bother explaining the greatness of that man to you." "Who are you calling hopeless?" replied Kushina, and this started a long argument between her and Kurama, which started to annoy me. Meanwhile, Minato was truly surprised as he thought, for Kurama to regard him so highly with great admiration. I never saw him mention anyone like this, even when I discussed with him about Madara Uchiha and the first Hokage. "Can you two stop bickering and just explain to me how's this related to the Sage of the Six Paths?" I said in annoyance, interrupting them, not wanting any more waste of my time. Kurama was pleased that I clearly believed him, unlike a certain Kushina which he shot a deadly glare before he continued his story. Anyways, one day I remember visiting him before his death, and I found him accompanied with a certain annoying toad, and they were discussing about this necklace in a severe tone. Apparently, the old sage found it by chance buried in some ancient ruin, and when I asked him about its use, he said that he couldn't find out. However, he felt a strong amount of both space and time attributes emanating from it, and guessed that it might be connected to another world. After that, I believe he sealed it away, but I don't know how it ended up in your family. After Kurama finished his explanation, I fell deep in thought as I started to think about all the possibilities related to this necklace. According to the letter left by my parents, this necklace was passed down in our family for generations. As for how it ended up in the hands of an Uchiha family, it's possible that after Hagoromo died, Indra, who's the ancestor of the Uchiha, stole it and gave it to his descendants later on for some reason. However, what is worrying is that even someone as talented as Minato, who has a great affinity with the space element, couldn't feel anything from the necklace, and if not for the seals engraved on it, no one would think of it as something special. So, for Hagoromo to consider it something from another world, it seems I should try that ability on it. "What are you thinking about, Bakorio?" asked Minato, who noticed me deep in thought, while Kushina kept asking Kurama about what he knew about the Sage of Six Paths to no avail, as it invoked the sad memory of knowing that his lifespan was cut short because decided to create the tailed beasts. "I'm trying to find out if this necklace is a blessing or a curse, that's all," I said with a sigh. "Don't worry about it. I'm sure we will understand its purpose in the future," said Minato with a kind smile, trying to cheer me up, and I couldn't help but smile back before I said wickedly, while shooting Kushina a glance, "I hope so too. At least I know your future is as dim as mine, ha." Minato's expression darkened a little when he remembered what was waiting for him, especially when Kushina turned to look at us just when I said this, and her hair started to slowly rise up. So with a smile I left the seal space while waving them goodbye. "This guy is really making me regret being nice, Tisich," thought Minato as a certain red-haired storm slowly approached him. Back to my house. I finally opened my eyes, and I found myself faced with a very bored Naruto, which made me feel guilty for letting him wait for so long, so I said, "Yo Naruto, I'm back." "Finally, what took you so long?" replied Naruto as some energy started returning to his face. "Oh, it's that annoying fox. He just doesn't know when to shut up and kept talking a lot," I replied without hesitation, putting all the blame on Kurama. "Sorry, Kurama. I had to sacrifice you. But it's okay, I'm sure you have 9 lives." Kurama was screaming inside the seal space when he heard how I put all the blame on him, but he would have felt worse if he could hear what I was thinking in my head. That's true. That stupid fox is stupid, said Naruto, and I couldn't help but laugh at how bad and funny this insult was. That's true. Anyways, go get Sasuke for me. Starting today, we are going to train harder. You want to be a ninja, right? Yes, I want to be a great ninja like my father, replied Naruto enthusiastically and started running to Sasuke's house, which made me nod in approval. Now then, let's see what we got here, I said as I picked up the necklace and used my appraisal ability on it. The system granted me many abilities and functions, but the one that had the most conditions to use so far was definitely the appraisal ability. There are two applications of this ability. Either you use it on people where it will show you their name, level, stats, and abilities, or you use it on items, and it will show you a general description of what they are along with their function. For example, when I use this ability on my basic heartless necklace, I get the following description. Name, heartless necklace, basic. Type, accessory. Level, none. Weight, 21.5 g. Description, this is a cheap imitation of the legendary heartless necklace made from the fangs of a nightmare bat. Function, plus 10% to Genjutsu power and to Genjutsu resistance. Requirements, compatible bloodline. However, the information you get depends on many factors, and it doesn't always show you everything, whether it be when you use it on humans or items. For items, I found that they could be categorized into the following ranks: trash/basic, /advanced, /rare, /epic, /legendary. As for humans, they are categorized in titles: normal/elite, /mini-boss/boss. Most of the Kage level ninja have boss or mini-boss titles, meaning that these people at the same level are far stronger than their counterparts. And this is what limits my ability, because I found out that the appraisal works fine on normal people and basic items as long as there's not more than 15 levels of difference between us. However, this margin grows smaller, and the smaller it is, the more the rank or the title grows higher, and it could be summarized as fellow. Basic/normal, 15 levels max. Advanced/elite, 10 levels max. Rare/mini-boss, same level or less. Epic/boss, I need to be at least 15 levels higher. So, I generally couldn't make much use of this ability in the war, especially when used on Kage level ninja, as other than their name, I get nothing else. And so, as I was going to use this ability on this necklace that even Hagoromo thought so highly of, I wasn't expecting much. Appraisal, I said in my head while looking at the beautiful necklace that I was holding in my right hand, and immediately, a screen appeared in front of me. Name. Type, accessory. Level. Weight, 18 g. Description. Function. Requirements. My eyes dilated a little bit as I thought, am I dreaming? Even the Kahaku no Johei that was a legendary item didn't have all of its information hidden, and I could at least see its rank. This one, however, even its rank is stated as. Now I'm sure this is not something from this world. No one is strong enough to make something of such high grade here, not even Hagoromo. As my thoughts reached this point, my heart started racing a little as I thought about something. The Kahaku no Johei, if used by someone without enough chakra, it will immediately drain them of every drop of chakra they have until end up dead. So, what would happen to me if this thing activates and starts draining my chakra? And I can't even be sure if I could load, as this thing had space and time energies when Hagoromo found it, so it might affect my ability. Certain death, I muttered, and for the first time since coming to this world, I felt how close death can be and the various ways it might knock on your door. So, without hesitation, I put that necklace in my inventory and decided to never touch it again unless I can decipher its purpose or have enough power to handle it. TCH. I can't relax at all, can I? I couldn't help but let out a sigh and tried to push this thing out of my head. -5 minutes later. The sound of two kids arguing over nothing approached the front door of my house, bringing a smile to my face. Good thing you two don't have to suffer, I thought as I opened the door, and to no surprise, there was someone else accompanying them. It was Itachi, who already detected but still pretended to be surprised when I saw him. I shot him a glance before I turned my attention to Sasuke and Naruto and said, "Okay, you two, stop bickering this early in the morning. We're going to start your training, and the first thing I need you to do is run 5 laps around the Uchiha compound. The first one to finish it will be the winner." The moment I finished what I was saying, I could see fire lighting up in their eyes, ready to settle who was better, and without any hesitation, they both turned around and started running while yelling at each other. "I will definitely win. No, I will win." And so, I was freed from this plague for a while and turned to handle the bigger one. After seeing them go far away from us, I turned my attention to Itachi, who was smiling while looking at them. "So, what do you two want this early in the morning?" I said while yawning. Itachi's eyes flashed for an instant as he thought, "What a monster." And not long after, Shursui flickered and landed beside Itachi with an apologetic face as he said, "Sorry for bothering you. Hokage-sama said he wants to talk to you about something." "Ichem, what does Fugaku want? And why are these two trying to test me? How annoying," I thought before I replied. "Okay, where's he?" "He's waiting for you at the Hokage's office," replied Shursui with a smile on his face. "Okay, I'm going then. Goodbye," I said and started moving towards the Hokage's office, ignoring them both. Shursui shot Itachi a serious look before he went back to his apologetic face and said, "Wait, Bakorio," said Shursui. I turned back to him and tilted my head, waiting for what the hell he wants, and he quickly said, "Itachi and I were also invited for this meeting. Let's go together." Many thoughts started racing in my mind, but all they can see was me shrugging my shoulder and nod at them before I started walking again. As we were leaving the Uchiha compound, Itachi couldn't help but ask, "Aren't you going to leave a note or something for Naruto and Sasuke? They might get upset if they don't find you when they finish their little challenge." "Oh, thinking about your little brother, you creep?" I thought before I replied without even looking at them. "It's fine. I left a clone in my house." Shursui and Itachi exchanged another look secretly before they turned to stare at my back in wariness, as they thought we actually didn't detect the presence of his clone at all. Shursui decided to quickly change the subject, so he said, "By the way, thank you for all that you did for the village and the clan. I can't imagine how serious this situation could have turned to if not for your plan, and even risking your life in fighting Danzo. Oh, I know what it could have turned into if I let go on with your stupidity. Still, this is the first time he's talking so sincerely. It seems like he's not a hopeless case," I thought before I replied. "Well, I did it for myself, so you don't need to thank me." Shursui didn't know what to say to such a selfish reason. "Do you guys know what this meeting is for?" I said casually while using my Jikaninki to detect if they were hiding anything. This time Itachi was the one to respond. "No, we actually don't know. Yesterday father told me about the meeting and to inform you and Shursui about it in the morning. So, I got Shursui before we came to visit you." "I see," I replied before I went into silence, and they did the same. Our walk was short, and before long, we reached the Hokage's office, and one of the Hokage's guards led us in right away before he left, and to my surprise, this place was kind of crowded. There was Fugaku sitting down, and beside him standing up were Hiruzen and Shikaku. I quickly greeted them before I went straight to the point. "So what's this meeting for?" The room went silent before Fugaku, who was sitting down, his hands on the desk and his chin resting on them, looked me in the eye and stoically said, "This meeting is for you. Or if I rephrase this better, we want to ask, who are you?" My eyes dilated as this simple question kept repeating itself on my head before I thought, well, this is unexpected. "Who are you?" asked Fugaku, not mincing his words and causing all the attention of the people in the room to be focused on me. "So it has all come to this, huh? Now that the situation is kind of stable for both the clan and Konoha, he finally decided to clear his suspicions, huh?" I thought as I looked apathetically at Fugaku, feeling betrayed by his lack of trust, and seeing how I was looking at him made him feel uncomfortable. Or was it the people in the room that pushed him to ask about this? I thought as I looked at everyone in the room with the same look. Shikaku didn't flinch at all, while Hiruzen only heaved a long sigh. As for Shursui and Itachi, I could see they were on guard, ready for anything unexpected. So, with a clearly disappointed face, I finally asked Fugaku directly, I'm going to ask you two questions, and I need you to answer them honestly before you receive the answer to your question. Silence filled the room as everyone waited for Fugaka's decision, but surprisingly, he nodded and said, "Go ahead, ask them." The first question is simple. What did I do that made you ask this question? I said to Fugaku, completely ignoring the rest of the people in the room as they didn't matter to me. Fugaka's reply came immediately and without hesitation, as he said, "You know too much, and your background doesn't match what you became." Explain further, I said, and this time Shikaku was the one that stepped forward with a stack of paper in his hand and said, "Allow me to explain in the Hokage's place." I nodded at him, and he started reading from his stack of paper. Name, Bakorio Uchiha. Parents, son of Yakumo and Yuzu Uchiha. Age, 5 years old. Talent, trash. Bloodline, diluted. Evaluation, not worth training. This is your old evaluation, and here's the new one. Name, Bakorio Uchiha. Parents, son of Yakumo and Yuzu Uchiha. Age, 5. Talent, monstrous. Bloodline, very high. Evaluation, a highly dangerous individual with extremely good social skills and a high level of kenjutsu, taijutsu, and ninjutsu that allows him to hold off a Kage-level ninja for a while. Origin suspected. After Shikaku read me everything, there was no change in my eyes, so he continued reading more. Now, if you were in our position, how would you perceive a person who transforms from a nobody with such low evaluation to a very dangerous individual in the span of a month or so without any apparent backing, and he seems to have critical information about many things that no one should know, and even seems to be using secret jutsu from other clans? The last point was clearly hinting at my use of shadows while fighting against Danzo. Does he think no one other than his Nara clan's bloodline could master the use of shadows? Unfortunately, for you I have a better bloodline than yours, I thought, as I remembered the reward of a certain quest I completed during the war. Back at the war, after I completed my last fight in the Kumo front, I received a notification. Quest serial killer, kill 100 people. Reward, 2,000 points, shadow bloodline, 25%. Before this, I got a notification after killing 10 people. Quest serial killer, kill 10 people. Reward, 400 points, killer intent, passive. But I didn't care about it during the war as it only gave me the passive ability, killing intent, which intensifies my killing intent and makes me release that ominous aura that I use so often to distract people or even immobilize them if they have weak minds. However, this is a double-edged sword because in the end, it made it hard for me to control the killing intent in my heart, allowing someone like Kurama, who has a special emotion-related ability, to sense it even though I was trying my best to hide it. The Shadow Bloodline, however, was another story. Unlike the Nara clan's bloodline that I suspect has more than one effect, similar to the Akimichi bloodline I have that increased my defense by half its percentage and also increases my affinity towards body-related yang-release jutsu. The Nara clan's bloodline help increase their intelligence and their affinity towards shadow-related jutsu by half its percentage. My shadow bloodline, however, focuses solely on increasing the affinity towards shadow-related jutsu, so my 25% in shadow bloodline is similar to a Nara's 50%, but only in regard to affinity towards shadow-related jutsu. They still beat me in the matter of intelligence. So, the moment I gained this bloodline, I visited the battlefield with IWA, where the Inoshikicho alliance was located, and made sure to learn any jutsu I found useful from the Nara and Akimichi clans to enhance my fighting arsenal. Back at the Hokage's office, Shikaku was still explaining his reasoning. And this is why we want to clear any suspicions around your identity, especially with how close you are to Naruto. Otherwise, this might cause some problems to the village if you decide to turn against it. Fugaku frowned a little when he heard this, but he didn't say anything as my expression kept turning colder and colder as a dangerous aura started slowly emanating from my body, which made the people in this room nervous, especially Itachi and Shursui, who already activated their Sharingans. Second question, and this is only for Fugaku to answer. I said, looking straight into his eyes, and once he nodded I simply asked, "Do you trust me?" The answer to this question was going to decide the way I consider this village in the future. Fugako felt like a boulder was put on top of his chest as he knew he was going too far by interrogating me like this even after all the things I did for him and the clan. Noticing how uncomfortable Fugako was, Hiruzen decided to insert himself in the conversation to pacify things out while letting out a sigh. This is about the safety O dash. However, the moment this idiot opened his mouth, my anger fully exploded as I said, "Say one more word, and you will die." A terrible killing intent started gushing out from my body, creating a strong wind current that started destroying the furniture in the room and made everyone gasp in fear. Just what kind of monster are we provoking? Thought Shikaku as his eyes widened in surprise. How many people do you have to kill to have such a killing intent? Thought Shursui in sadness. As for Itachi, he could only think of one thing. How's it possible for such unfairness to exist in this world? What would happen if such power lands in the wrong hands? Other than Fugaku that simply kept staring at me in surprise and guilt, the people in the room were shocked to different degrees, and even the Umbu and the Hokage's guard were alarmed by this. However, the one who got surprised the most was definitely Hiruzen, who had most of the killing intent focused on him, until he saw a shadowy figure appear behind my back. It was a black humanoid with a black and sharp sickle in its right hand raised horizontally, and before he could gather his wits, he found the sickle was already on his neck. Sweat started pouring from his head, and he couldn't help but swallow his saliva in a fear that only kept increasing the longer the silence continued until it was interrupted by Fugaku when he said, "I will give you my answer." The dangerous aura around me slowly retracted back to my body, and before long, the illusion that only Hiruzen was seeing also vanished, and only then did he notice how sweaty both his hands were. I'm growing older day by day, and the coming generations are quickly surpassing us, sigh. I kept staring at Fugaku waiting for his response, and to my surprise, he looked at me in the eye uncaring of all the ominous aura around me. And to the shock of everyone in the room, and that arrived after my outburst, he simply said, "I trust you." "I trust you," said Fugaku with his usually stoic face, and at the same time, his special guards along with the Umbu guarding around the area arrived to the office, while heaving a sigh of relief when they found out that only some furniture was damaged and no one was harmed. One of the Umbu, a man with spiky gray hair who had a distinctive Sharingan shining through the hole in his mask, quickly analyzed the situation and noticed that the people in the room were staring in shock at Fugaku and wariness at the kid facing him. So, to his surprise, his mind came to a terrifying conclusion. Was it really this kid that released that terrifying killing intent? However, before he could confirm his doubts, one of the three special Hokage guards immediately arrived in front of Fugaku along with the other two and directly asked, "Fifth Hokage-sama, is everything okay? We felt that a strong enemy might be around," he dash. Before he could finish what he was saying, Fugaku cut him off and said, "The situation's under control. Return to your positions immediately." The special guard shot a look at the destroyed office and was about to refute this order, but dash. However, he then saw the cold look in Fugaku's eyes and understood immediately that it wasn't the time to be hard-headed. "Idiot, can't you read the mood at all, tch?" thought Kakashi before he quickly said, "We will take our leave then. Please call us if you need anything." And then he immediately left. Fugaku nodded at him in appreciation, and before long, the rest of the Umbu followed after him along with the special guards. With the distractions gone, everyone turned their attention to me, and I took note of each and every single one of their expressions and how they were changing while waiting for what I was going to say next. A smile couldn't help but break on my face, a genuine smile that made them wonder if they truly experienced that horrifying killing intent from the same person. "I'm glad you trusted me. I understand your reasons to suspect my identity, and they are reasonable. You would be stupid if you didn't think about them. However, I can't expose my secrets, at least not now. However, I can help you put everything concerning this matter to rest, I said with a smile. Please, I really trust you, but I still want to put our minds at ease, said Fugaku, clearly offering me a chance not to explain myself to him, but to the village. Thank you, I said in my mind, while looking at Fugaku before I turned my attention to the people in the room that were looking at me suspiciously. Why is my father putting this much trust on Bakorio? It almost seems like he considers him. Itachi's heart was suddenly filled with disappointment, something that escaped the notice of everyone in the room except for the one that understood him the most. Shursui. The reason you can trust me is simple. I have many people I care about in Konoha, so I can't allow any harm to befall it, I said, but Shikaku shook his head and said, this reason is very commendable, but this alone is not enough to offset the hidden danger you could pose. I nodded at him. I understand. That's why I also made a plan to help the village. A mastermind like Shikaku was immediately intrigued by how the village could be helped, and the rest of the people in the room also felt the same, including Itachi, who cared deeply about the village, so without hesitation Shikaku said, please elaborate more. Take a look at this, I said as I handed Fugaku a scroll while thinking, your trust isn't going to go to waste, my friend. The people in the room were surprised at Fugaku directly accepting the scroll, not suspecting it to contain any trap, which made Itachi unconsciously use his Sharingan to quickly check it, and heaved a sigh of relief when he found nothing suspicious about it. However, Fugaku noticed this and shot him a cold glare which made him deactivate his Sharingan in disappointment. What's wrong with Itachi today? Thought Fugaku before he turned his attention back to the scroll before his eyes suddenly widened, his stoic face breaking apart as he stood up from his seat. Is this true? Said Fugaku, already believing it to be true but still wanted to confirm it as he thought, if the content of this scroll's true, it seems we barely avoided a huge disaster. I calmly nodded at him with a serious look on my face, and the people in the room finally couldn't hold back their curiosity anymore, so they asked. What's wrong, Fugaku? Asked Hiruzen, and with a slightly shaken hand, Fugaku didn't respond and simply handed the scroll that felt heavy to him, who had an even more exaggerated reaction as he read through it along with Shikaku, who broke out in a cold sweat and felt a fear he never felt before. I never thought we were digging our grave to such a degree. I really failed my duty as a military advisor and Jonin commander, thought Shikaku with a heavy heart. This is no joke. Are you sure of the content of this scroll? Asked Hiruzen with a dark countenance that only appears when he's about to go to war. And the answer he received was a simple yes. Shursue's and Itachi's curiosity got ignited seeing the reactions of all these grown-ups, so they tried to take a look at the scroll. However, Hiruzen immediately closed it, letting them only catching a glimpse of its title, Konoha's Destruction. What's all of this about? Thought Itachi as he shot his friend a wondering look, but Shursui was as puzzled as him, if not more, as he gave the kid facing the current Hokage a deep look. This information cannot leave this room, understood? Said Fugaku with a scary face, while emanating a dangerous aura, and everyone agreed with him immediately, including the two clueless Uchiha geniuses. Itachi, Shursui, leave at once, ordered Fugaku. Itachi and Shursui were elite, so they didn't act childish and immediately left, understanding that the situation was beyond them, and once they left, a heated discussion started concerning the content of the scroll. I wrote this scroll yesterday, and I included in it all the information I collected about the spies planted here by each hidden village, as well as the consequences of Danzo's action if he truly forced the Uchiha to rebel, and what would have happened if the other villages interfered at that point. Bakorio, how did you come across all this information? Asked Shikaku with a serious face. I told you, I can't disclose my secrets. But you can trust me. I only want what's good for the village, and I'm sure you already have an idea about the validity of this information. After all, some of them people mentioned are already suspected for being spies, but you just couldn't find proof of it. Now, however, you have the evidence you need. It seems I really failed this village and almost caused its destruction, said Hiruzen with a sigh, and I couldn't agree more with what he said. You should handle this situation carefully. As for me, soon I will be leaving the village and hopefully I will bring with me a surprise, I said with a smile before I simply disappeared in a puff of smoke. Fugaka looked at this for an instant and couldn't help but burst out laughing. What Koto Tsukumi? What a Matsumi Kaboshi, Fugaka's Mangekyo ability. That kid probably guessed our purpose from the start, and he was testing me. I almost messed up again. Meanwhile, the people in the room simply stared in shock at just how easily they were all played. It seems that Fugaka didn't disappoint me, and it all turned out all right in the end, I thought as I received the memories from the shadow clone I sent to the meeting. Konoha is going to be occupied for a while with the matter of the spies, so it's time to solve a few problems of my own once and for all, and the key to many of them lies in the hands of one person. Tsunade, huh? I muttered while watching the two kids training in front of me throwing kunais and shurikens on different targets on the trees. Ag, why can't I get it right? Groaned Naruto, annoyed that whatever he throws doesn't even connect with the tree, and to add salt to the injury, right after Sasuke made a move. Top. All his throws almost hit a bullseye, which in turn made him look smugly at Naruto in a challenging manner as he said, I will be the first to surpass Bakorio. Oh really? We will see about that, replied Naruto, accepting the challenge, not backing down at all before he started training harder. I couldn't help but smile at these kids putting me as their goal. Dreams are nice to have, even unachievable ones. I then started thinking seriously about my next course of action. I need to find Tsunade and test out a certain theory to revive Minato and Kushina. There's also the matter with Mukai's kid. I need to help treat his illness to gain Mukai's true loyalty. I don't want to lose such a precious talent or forcefully control him again. And then there's Jiraiya. Jiraiya was the best person I can find and learn how to control natural energy from, or at least gain some experience in this regard, so meeting him was necessary for recharging the system. Well, first let's see what that bastard is doing, I thought before I retrieved the communication device Minato and Kushina created, and I immediately sent my chakra into it. Somewhere in the land of fire, a man was walking out of a village in disappointment while smoking casually. Just where am I supposed to find that woman, Tisich? She's clearly making sure to erase her trail wherever she goes, said Mukai with a face full of irritation at the thought of the time he's going to waste to find Tsunade, but he kept consoling himself with the thought that she might be capable of healing his son, so it was worth it in the end. He then was about to take out a map from his pouch to check for the location of the next village or city nearby with a famous gambling establishment, but his action was interrupted when he sensed something vibrating. What's this? Mukai's irritated expression immediately disappeared, and what replaced it was an eerie calmness as he entered his fighting mode. But then when he retrieved the item that was vibrating, he finally remembered what it was. Oh, so it's that item the kid gave me to communicate with him from a distance, huh? He said I need to put my chakra into it to use it. Without wasting much time, Mukai started injecting some chakra into the device. Hello there, Mukai. Do you miss my voice? A slightly distorted voice traveled to Mukai's ears, and he wasn't sure what irritated him the most, the voice or its owner. This device will stop working if I cease injecting chakra into it, right? Said Mukai, apathetically threatening to stop the conversation, so I quickly replied. TCH, you are no fun at all as always. Anyways, I found Tsunade, so you can stop looking for her. Thanks for nothing, I said to the shock of Mukai. What? How did he find her this fast? Not even the elders of Konoha know her location. It seems I underestimated this kid. Where? Replied Mukai with some interest in his voice, and I simply said, Meet me at the southern lake in 6 hours, I said as I stopped transmitting my chakra without waiting for this idiot's response. Sigh, kids these days, muttered Mukai, before he suddenly vanished like a phantom and started going south where the southern lake was located. It was a very popular location close to the border of the land of fire and the land of tea, so he knew about it. Back at Konoha. After I stopped injecting my chakra into the device, I turned my attention to Naruto and Sasuke and said with a smile, Hey guys, want to go on a trip with me outside of Konoha? The moment Naruto heard me, he immediately threw away the shurikens and kunais he had in his hands and arrived in front of me in a yellow flash. WTF, are you Minato or something? I thought before I heard Naruto excitedly talk with a wide grin on his cute face. I'm going. Let's go right now. This is going to be fun. Sasuke also arrived soon after with an excited face, but he hesitated a little bit as he said, I will need to ask Mother first. Go ahead then. Ask her, and don't take too long because I'm setting off in 15 minutes, I said with a smile, and Sasuke quickly turned around and started running to his house. I then turned my attention on the mess these kids left behind, bringing a frown to my face before I released a sigh and started extending chakra strings from my fingertips and collecting all the kunais and shurikens on the floor and embedded on the trees. Woo, this is so cool. What's this? Asked Naruto with his big blue eyes widening in wonder. I'm manipulating and concentrating chakra into strings so that they don't break easily and could hold a certain weight. This is something used by people who manipulate puppets as their way of fighting, I replied to him as I easily collected everything into a bag. Why use puppets? They must be weak, said Naruto while his imagination ran wild thinking of someone using a teddy bear to fight. Let's go home and prepare for the trip. This kind of chakra manipulation is still way out of your league for now, I said as I turned around and started walking back home. Oh, I can easily do it. Look, said Naruto before he started focusing on his hand to the best of his ability while yelling, Eh. Now you are turning into Goku. I let out a sigh and ignored this idiot as I kept walking, and before long, a disappointed Naruto started running after me with a pout on his face. My heart softened a little, so I said, I will teach you how to do it in the future, but you need to promise me to be a good kid during this trip. Naruto's face was filled with a huge grin as he said, All right, it's a promise. Back home, I picked some money as well as food and water for the trip because it might last longer with Naruto and Sasuke, who can't run as fast as Ninja. Almost 15 minutes later, Sasuke came knocking at my house, and to no surprise whatsoever, he was accompanied by his brother Itachi and his friend Shursui. Sasuke uncomfortably said, Bakorio, I can go, but my mother insisted on big brother Itachi accompanying us. I smiled at him and said, It's fine, the more company the better, before I shot a look secretly at the two brats behind him. Shursui smiled and said, Where are we going? Naruto finally realized that he was so excited at the thought of leaving the village for the first time that he didn't ask where they were going, so he looked at me curiously. We are going to meet a friend, and then go meet someone else. Anyways, if you are ready, let's head off, I said as I started walking in the direction of Konoha's gate, pretending I haven't noticed a certain Kakashi tailing after us. Is he moving on his own, or did someone order him? Either way, it doesn't seem like Itachi and Shursui are aware of his presence. Well, Fugaku, it seems you passed this test too, huh? This is really surprising. I started feeling a little confused. After all, I decided to invite Naruto and Sasuke to test Fugaku in the village one last time, and he actually passed it even though there seems to be a lot of opposition to this decision. Hence, Kakashi's presence here. As for Itachi and Shursui's presence, I didn't have any doubt that it was Mikoto trying to ensure our safety, that's all. Maybe I can have another true friend in this village. I thought as we finally reached Kanoa's gates.
That's it for today. Remember to show your support to the creator of this story if you enjoyed it. If you would like more parts of the story to be uploaded, leave a comment and subscribe to get notified when the story continues. Bye-bye for now, and I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.